Chapter 783. I can provide you with the qualifications to accept the modification, and the conditions for cooperation are very simple. Han Shao looked around at the people present, raised his finger, and slowly said, "The first is of course money. You have to pay a sum of anas every year in exchange for a fixed quota to accept the modification of the evolution cube. This is the basic borrowing fee, and it doesn't have to be money. Minerals, materials, fuel, and other resources can all be converted into money." "How much does it cost every year?" a star cluster civilization representative asked. "That depends on your needs." Han Shao had an honest expression that said, "I've always been honest when doing business. Your borrowing fee every year depends on how many quotas you want to buy every year. You have to report to me in advance, and I will arrange a schedule for you to receive the modification. Every organization can buy a maximum of 1 million quotas every year. After all, I'm also very busy." Although Han Shao had endless energy, his time was limited, and he could not spend all his time helping others use the evolution cube. Furthermore, the effect of the evolution cube would weaken if the same person used it repeatedly. Han Shao limited the quota for the long term. What if we want the entire race to enjoy the evolution? Someone could not help but ask. Good question. Han Shao raised his brows. Apart from a basic quota, you can buy additional modification quotas. There is no limit to the number, but the price will be much higher than the basic quota. It's not that I'm looking down on your wealth, but with the huge population of your civilization, paying this fee will most likely cost a lot. The representatives of the various civilizations felt a little regretful. To them, evolving the entire race at once was the best result. Unfortunately, Han Shao was clearly not willing to do a one-time deal. The population of a star system civilization started from at least 10 billion, and the cost was astronomical. However, thinking about it, there was indeed no need for the entire race to evolve. Every advanced civilization had a bunch of useless people who did not work, and it was clearly a waste of money to buy them a quota to evolve. The representatives of the various civilizations could accept the millions of quotas every year going the route of the elite, and having a portion of them improve their genes first. Han Shao raised a second finger. The second condition is business cooperation. This will be decided based on the nature of your organization. Civilizations can provide the mining rights of resource planets, transportation routes, and military factories. Armed organizations have to establish a military alliance with the Black Star Corps. Intelligence organizations can share intelligence, and financial groups can provide more business cooperation. These are the prerequisites for you to buy a slot from me. The people present were from different forces. Han Zhao's move was to expand the business of the Black Star Corps. He wanted to get involved in different industries, find more ways to make money, and strive to be successful in all fields. At the same time, through business cooperation, they formed a deeper cooperative relationship with various forces. This was within everyone's expectations, so they were not surprised. After analyzing all kinds of information, they knew that Black Star was an ambitious person. Since he had the opportunity to become a beyond grade A organization, he naturally would not be satisfied with a mere armed organization. The last condition, "I hope to have a seat in the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference," Han Shao said with a deep voice. The nature of the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference was the same as the Galaxy General Court. It was a political alliance belonging to the civilizations of the star field, and a star system civilization was the prerequisite to join. The representatives of the various civilizations exchanged looks, and someone said hesitantly, "Only civilizations can join. Black Star, although your organization is strong, you're not a civilization." Han Shao smiled. "Don't worry, I know this rule. I'm prepared to join in the name of my mother planet." Blue Star? Everyone looked at each other. "If I remember correctly, your mother planet civilization has not reached the star system level yet. It's not enough to join," Han Shao shrugged. "That's why I raised this condition. Only by obtaining a seat in the civilization conference could he obtain political influence on the surface, which was the so-called official status. This way, even if the Blue Star had not reached the star system level, they would be able to enjoy the protection of the peace treaty. He would also be able to benefit from this. Not only would his personal status be higher, but his Black Star Corps would also be able to transform into a semi-official army. The members of the army would be able to obtain all sorts of legal protection, which was equivalent to a protective talisman. Simply put, as long as this matter was completed, if other players were to casually attack the members of the Black Star Corps, they would become the red names of the many organizations in the Order faction. At the same time, they would lose a lot of favorability with many organizations. Hearing this, the representatives of the various civilizations were helpless. This matter was beyond their authority, and they all said that they could not make the decision and would have to ask the upper echelons before they could give a reply. However, Han Xiao was not worried. The Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference was controlled by the Star Cluster civilizations in the Star Field. Now that these Star Cluster civilizations wanted to cooperate with him, it was not difficult for them to make an exception and include him. To them, all they had to do was find a reason. During the Secret War period, many Star Cluster civilizations were not willing to see the Black Star grow and secretly did many things. However, what was done could not be undone, so they could only lower their heads and seek cooperation. The Shattered Star Ring had been affected by the Crimson Tide for 10 years, and the structure of the Shattered Star Ring had undergone subtle changes. At this juncture, it was the best opportunity to make use of this opportunity. After the initial cooperation intent was finalized, the guests bid farewell and left. They were only expressing their stance today. The specific details of the cooperation would need to be discussed by the affairs department of both parties. This would be the job of Sylvia and Philip. Han Xiao tapped on the table and pondered. In his plan, this was a crucial step in the expansion of the Black Star Corps. With the Evolution Cube as the catalyst, he would form a partnership of interest with the Black Star Corps at the center, turning the army into a hub for cooperation between the organizations. Not only would he enjoy the cooperation, but he would also connect the channels of the various organizations, forming a huge interest network. In order to achieve this, his own organization had to be strong enough, and the Black Star Corps, as a beyond Grade A organization, had this qualification. Making use of this opportunity, the Black Star Corps could rapidly grow and maintain this interest network for a long time. He could indirectly turn the Shattered Star Ring into the headquarters of the Black Star Corps and obtain a steady stream of resources. Currently, the Evolution Cube was the key to attracting cooperation, but as long as he managed it well in the long term and let the various organizations see the benefits of working together, they would continue to cooperate even without the Evolution Cube. Just like how Heber had made the Tyrant's Party a publicly recognized party for the upper echelons, Han Zhao's goal was to make the Black Star Corps a publicly recognized hub for cooperation and interest in the Shattered Star Ring. After 3 days, all the guests finally arrived. Early in the morning, Heber invited everyone to the palace and officially started the party. The hall was decorated like a banquet. The musicians played their instruments, and the representatives of the various organizations formed small circles in 2s and 3s, whispering to each other. Han Xiao and the others also occupied a corner and were surrounded by many people. The players who followed them were also brought in. They looked around curiously and used their detection skills on the people around them. Everywhere they looked, everyone was a big shot. A few beyond grade, as were also chatting with people in the hall. These players had heard about the Tyrant's Party in the past few days. Now that they saw so many organization representatives, the importance of this party skyrocketed in their hearts. All the guests present added up to the ruling class of the Shattered Star Ring. It turned out that Black Star was also at this level. Such high-level activities were usually not accessible to the players. These people posted about the Tyrant's Party on the forums, and only then did the players know of such a party and began discussing it excitedly. So Black Star is interacting with people of this level now. He's a faction leader. It's inevitable. All 5 beyond grade as are here. Haha, won't they fight? Isn't Bloodshed Land our enemy? Why is Black Star there? This time, Heber walked out from the crowd. Everyone stopped talking and looked at Heber. In the past decade or so, many things have happened in the Shattered Star Ring. Fortunately, I can still see so many familiar faces today. Heber slowly said, "Before the party begins, I would like to announce something. As he spoke, he turned to look at Han Xiao and said with a deep voice, "After a private discussion, Black Star and I have come to an agreement. We have decided to temporarily stop the war and participate in the Red Empire's development of the flickering world. Everyone here is a witness." Everyone turned to look at him, and Han Xiao nodded. Flickering world? Many players muttered to themselves. This piece of information immediately attracted their attention. Han Xiaoxin smiled. He knew that Heber would definitely announce this during the party. He immediately released the prepared mission on the faction interface. At the same time, the interface of the many players changed. In the list of missions that could be accepted, the Grade S Plus main storyline mission of Flickering World was placed at the top. Oh my, a new main storyline mission. What the F***CK? Grade S Plus difficulty. This is even higher than the Secret War. This should be our next main storyline in version 3.0. Developing the Flickering World. It seems like this is the next large-scale operation of the Black Star Corps. The army players were overjoyed, and many of them accepted the mission. Such a difficult main storyline was obviously a huge event. Originally, after the Secret War ended, many players had entered a period of aimless, free exploration. Now they had a new goal. Due to the recent series of events, the players at this stage had a strong sense of belonging to the army. In their eyes, the storyline of the Black Star Corps was equivalent to the main storyline. The players did not know much about the details of the Flickering World, and there were countless posts on the forums discussing it. Han Xiao glanced at them and was quite satisfied with the effect of this wave of hype. However, the army players did not know that the Flickering World was not only the storyline of version 3.0 that connected to the Secret War, but also the main storyline of the next version. The cooperation that needed to be discussed had already been discussed a few days ago, and the formal gathering was just a formality for Han Xiao. Since Heber had announced a ceasefire, he naturally would not allow his subordinates to cause trouble. With his restrictions, Rothers did not come looking for trouble, and everything was peaceful. Participating in the Tyrant's party this time, he had basically completed his goal. Han Xiao was quite satisfied with the result. After the gathering ended, he did not stay any longer. After using the evolution cube on Austin once, he left with Ames, Gila, and the other officers. He left as soon as he said he was leaving, not taking a single cloud with him. Who? The spaceship left planet Heber. Han Xiao turned on his communicator and dialed Bennett's number. Over the past few days, the representatives of those civilizations had reported his request for cooperation to the upper echelons, and the upper echelons had already replied and agreed to these conditions. Han Xiao used the name of Blue Star to obtain a seat in the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference, so there was basically no problem with this. Only then did he contact Bennett. Very soon, the call went through. Han Xiao, why are you free to look for me today? Bennett's carefree laughter sounded. There's something I have to tell you. Han Xiao explained. Hearing this, Bennett was pleasantly surprised. You're helping the Aquamarine Federation enter the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference? That's great. Blue Star was only a beginner galactic civilization and was far from the threshold of the Civilization Conference. Being able to enter the Civilization Conference was undoubtedly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'll be the representative of the civilization. You have no objections, right? Han Xiao said. The seat of the Civilization Conference belonged to the entire civilization, and normally, the representative of the civilization would be the government. However, although Han Xiao had a close relationship with the Aquamarine Federation, they were still two different forces. If he did this, even if this seat belonged to the Blue Star government, they would only be able to express their opinions through Han Xiao. Bennett did not hesitate at all. This is an opportunity that you've fought for us. Furthermore, you're the guardian of Blue Star. Giving the seat to you is actually beneficial to us. You'll have more say than us. He had thought it through very clearly. Even if Blue Star were to develop for many years, they would not be able to reach the achievements of the Black Star Corps. He was not willing to see the Blue Star civilization make the wrong choice in the future. Thus, he was paving the way in advance and trying to bind the Blue Star government to the Black Star Corps. Han Xiao smiled and chatted for a while before hanging up. After thinking about it, he decided to use the evolution cube on a large scale for Blue Star when he returned. Since he had obtained the Blue Star government seat, the better Blue Star developed, the greater his benefits would be. That's right, I should go and take a look at the Black Spirit race. I can let them use the evolution cube as well. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. This race worshipped him as a totem, so they could be considered half of his people. Chapter 784. Somewhere in the Shattered Star Ring, dense streams of hyperdrive light streaked across the quiet and dark universe. Within the hyperspace movement formation was a huge fleet made up of many Crimson Dynasty heavy-armored ships that looked like giant steel beasts. The heavy industrial-style hull was filled with various shipboard mechanical components. It was awe-inspiring and awe-inspiring. This was the industrial logistics team that the Red Empire had sent to the Shattered Star Ring. Other than the transportation of resources, they were also responsible for industrial construction and had the ability to set up production lines and military factories. The usual method was to use the Red Empire's base expansion pack to quickly form a stronghold and increase the number of soldiers. This industrial logistics team had two main goals. One was to provide logistics for the Shattered Star Ring's garrison and strengthen the garrison's armed forces. The other was to head to the Flickering World's Dawn Star cluster and build the Dynasty's exploration team's main base there. As for transporting a batch of resources for the Black Star Corps, it was just a small matter. The three universal civilizations had many fast military routes that crossed star fields. They used super-large stargates to connect star fields or set up small and medium-sized stargates in desolate universe belts for continuous jumps. This logistics team spent a lot of time gathering manpower, but the journey was not long. They set off from the central galaxy and arrived at the Shattered Star Ring very quickly. At this moment, on the route of the logistics team, a small reconnaissance fleet was exploring. There were only 12 light reconnaissance spaceships. Below the radar of the reconnaissance main ship, a middle-aged man with a determined face stood with his hands behind his back and looked up at the image. Tenny Aminos, the 001, for 855, outstanding graduate of the Dynasty's Journey, Advanced Military Academy. His average score for 62 courses, including strategy, tactics, and actual combat, was first in his batch. After graduation, he entered the Dynasty's military and was recruited by the military to participate in many military operations. He had experienced more than 1,000 galactic battles and had a record of 170 independent commands. He had made many contributions and been promoted several times. Currently, he belonged to the Dynasty's 33rd Army and was a colonel. He was an important figure in the Dynasty's military and was one of the elites who had been modified by the Evolution Cube. He was the one who had requested to be in charge of the reconnaissance work of the transport team. He did not like to be pampered and could not stay idle at the back. Tenny looked very energetic and dignified. His aura was like a burning flame, masculine and strong. His back was straight like a flag that was erected. A semicircular alloy ring that wrapped around the back of his head was pinned to his ears. This was an advanced multifunctional analyzer built by the Empire. It had the functions of communication, detection, analysis, strategic view, and so on. He was wearing the Red Empire's high-ranking military officer uniform. It was black with red and gold embellishments. In the middle of his chest was the Empire's national emblem. The Crimson Dynasty's high-ranking military officer uniforms were all made of nanocloth. They were light, tough, and had extremely high defense. They also had functions such as stress shields, deflector shields, kinetic energy accumulation, light reflection, advanced life support, environmental adaptation, and so on. They were extremely useful in both combat and daily life. Colonel Tenny, the radar intercepted a distress signal at coordinates T406. 22. It's on our route. According to the over-the-horizon observation, an interstellar travel team was attacked by a galactic pirate group. The enemy has 30 battleships, and the spaceships are low-level models. His personal adjutant, Corbouz, saluted and reported the situation loudly. Issue a regional broadcast and warn them to leave our path immediately. Tenny spoke very quickly. The broadcast has been issued, but the enemy did not respond. Corvus looked at the detection screen and said loudly, "The enemy has increased their attack, trying to finish off the interstellar travel team as soon as possible. You report the situation to the main force. The rest of you, change to battle formation. Level 2 alert. Load the over-the-horizon towing shooting tactic and roaming tactic." Tenny ordered calmly. His mission was to scout the road and remove any unstable factors. As an elite officer of the dynasty, he did not like to cause unnecessary trouble. The call for help from the interstellar travel team was not within his consideration. It was only because this group of people happened to be blocking the hyperdrive route of the main force that he ordered the fleet to chase them away. The 12 reconnaissance battleships formed a fan and headed toward the galactic pirates. As soon as they entered the over-the-horizon shooting range, they started firing. This group of galactic pirates was attacked and tried to fight back, but they could barely hit the reconnaissance fleet. Under Tenny's command, the reconnaissance fleet controlled the maximum shooting range. After blowing up a few enemy battleships easily, Tenny changed tactics and ordered the reconnaissance fleet to circle around and surround them. Although the total number was less than half of the enemies, Tenny was always able to form an advantage in numbers. Under his tactical command, it was like this group of galactic pirates was surrounded and slowly eaten up. Tenny was used to fighting in large armies. Small group battles were not his forte, but he was still good at it. His tactical style was as steady as a mountain, and he was not in a hurry. It was like an adult playing with a child. No matter what these galactic pirates did, they were easily resolved by him. Even if the reconnaissance fleet did not release any bubbles, space stabilizers, these galactic pirates would not be able to find a chance to escape through hyperdrive. They were beaten up so badly that they did not know where they were. The difference in tactical ability was like heaven and earth, and there was also a huge difference in the performance of the spaceship. This battle did not last long, and this group of galactic pirates was wiped out without any surprise. Tenny's losses were basically zero, and he only used a portion of the energy to maintain the shield. Inform the main force that the problem is solved. Tenny's tone was calm. He was used to large-scale galactic wars, and the battle just now was not even a warm-up for him. He did it casually and was very calm. "Colonel, the spaceship of this interstellar travel team is severely damaged and cannot support long-distance travel. They are begging to board the ship." Corbu's adjutant's voice was like thunder. "Rejected." Tenny's expression did not change. "Activate the scanning probe and remotely detect the energy level of the individuals in the spaceship of this travel team. If there are no abnormalities, release a small cabin for them to use as a carrier." Tenny had experience with this. There were too many cases in history where the distress signal was used as a trap. He was used to being wary of traps and scanning to see if there were any high-level combatants hiding. Even if there were no problems, he would not let outsiders board his battleship. Instead, he would use an empty, small cabin to throw these stranded passengers to the nearest colonial planet. He would not waste time escorting them. Corvus suddenly received a message. "Colonel, someone in this group of passengers wishes to speak to you. His identity is in the database. He's the leader of a small financial group in the Shattered Star Ring. He said that he knows Black Star." "How'd he know that we're looking for Black Star? It sounds like a lousy trap." Tenny raised his brows. "This might be easy to explain." Corvus looked at the information, shook his head, and said, "The news of our dynasty forming an alliance with Black Star has spread very widely in the Shattered Star Ring." Tenny thought for a while and said, "Connect the call. I'll talk to him." Under normal circumstances, he would not respond to such a request from an unrelated person. However, since the other party mentioned Black Star, it happened to be a topic that he had been very curious about recently. Black Star was the dynasty's new ally, and Tenny knew that he was going to Black Star to accept the modification of the evolution cube. Regardless of friend or foe, before dealing with others, he would first understand the target through intelligence. This came from his military habit. He had already read all the information about Black Star on paper and needed more information about Han Shao. Beep. The call went through, and this financial group leader had an excited and nervous look on his face. After being attacked by the galactic pirates, he originally thought that he was going to be unlucky. He did not expect to be saved by the Red Empire and see the opportunity to contact a universal civilization. In order to attract attention, he decided to try and mention Black Star's name. How do you know Black Star? More than 10 years ago, I once hired Black Star's mercenary group and came into close contact with Black Star. This is all recorded. This person replied hurriedly. Okay, tell me from the beginning. Tenny narrowed his eyes. Even in the central galaxy, there was no example of someone rising so quickly. It could be said that Black Star had broken the historical record of advancing from an ordinary person to a beyond grade A super. Tenny was very curious about such a legendary person. Furthermore, Black Star was also a mechanic like him, a beyond grade A of the same class. Tenny even had the intention of asking him for advice. Returning from planet Heber, Han Shao brought back the cooperation intentions of many organizations. Sylvia immediately became busy, discussing the details of the cooperation with different organizations every day. She was so busy that her feet barely touched the ground. Thankfully, she had the physique of a calamity grade. If it was an ordinary person, they would have probably died from exhaustion. Sylvia was very hardworking, and Han Shao was very happy about this. If his manager was Jenny, she would probably have tried to kill him with a psionic bomb. Ames did not return to Floating Dragon Island. She took the initiative to find Han Shao to accompany her. It did not matter where they went. The main thing was that she had an old friend of the same level to chat with every day. Furthermore, working together with Han Shao, she felt that they would often encounter interesting things. The dynasty's elites were still on the way, so Han Shao decided to complete the evolution of Blue Star and the Black Spirit race first. Blue Star needed time to gather the people, so he left this matter to Bennett. Han Shao went to the Black Spirit race first. The Black Spirit race had a mental connection network, so it was easier to gather them. Planet Black Spirit. Ever since the Black Spirit race gained a foothold on this uninhabited planet, the name of this planet had officially changed on the star map. Who? The spaceship broke through the atmosphere and slowly descended. The grayish-green surface gradually enlarged in his vision. The radar showed signs of life. Han Shao piloted the spaceship and headed toward the Germinal tribe's territory. There were no clouds in the sky. After passing through the vast land that was mainly made of rocks and decorated with sparse forests, a huge sinkhole appeared in front of them. This was a large, open-air nest. Densely packed holes were distributed on the walls of the nest, extending in all directions. This was originally an underground nest, but the Black Spirit race had removed the soil above their heads and exposed it. Han Shao had once borrowed a portion of the Black Spirit race to mine resource planets. The Black Spirit race had been influenced by the various cultures in the galaxy and had started to learn about wisdom and civilization. Because the mental network had a highly unified group consciousness, the spread of knowledge was extremely efficient. In the past decade or so, the Black Spirit race had tried to abandon their beastly habits and learned how to use tools to build nests on the ground. There were some messy piles of rocks in this open-air nest, which were actually the embryonic form of a building. The Black Spirit race had gradually walked up to the surface from underground. This could actually be considered the embryonic form of a city. In the center of the nest stood a huge prophecy stone totem, carved into a strange shape. Han Shao squinted his eyes and carefully looked at it for a long time before confirming that this sculpture with a shell, spikes all over its body, and sharp fangs in its mouth was carved into him. Han Shao did not know whether to laugh or cry. After adding so many artistic touches, he could still recognize who it was. The Black Spirit race's stone carving skills were really uncanny. But this aesthetic sense, the spaceship floated above the nest. The Germinal tribe's Black Spirit race members all crawled out of their caves and looked up at the spaceship. Han Shao walked out of the cabin door and slowly descended from the sky. The Black Spirit race below became restless, and they all lowered their bodies as if they were worshipping. Fu Ding released his psychic power and let Han Shao log into the Prophecy Stone Group's chat server. As soon as Han Shao entered the mental network of the Black Spirit race, Countless voices flooded over. The thoughts of every Black Spirit race member were clear and clear. What a powerful aura. It's so beautiful. God Blackstar, you've come to see us again. Countless Black Spirit race members chattered in the mental network, expressing their love and respect for Han Shao. The Black Spirit race treated him as a totem god and called him God. His reputation had always been at reverence. The Germinal tribe's leader's voice sounded, full of worship. Respected God Blackstar, what do you need us to do? This time it's to help you evolve. Han Shao explained the function of the evolution cube. The Black Spirit race members were pleasantly surprised. They all chanted strange prayers, thinking that this was the good news of their god. This news was spread through the mental network almost instantly to all the Black Spirit race members in the nest. They all moved and surrounded Han Shao in circles. Their forelimbs were on the ground, and their lower abdomens were raised in a respectful manner. Their gathering speed was extremely fast. What a highly efficient race. Han Shao could not help but sigh. He had always felt that the Black Spirit race's civilization potential was abnormal. They were born with a mental network to coordinate group movements, and it was extremely convenient for them to move together. Furthermore, the mental network allowed them to share knowledge and wisdom. It was almost easy for them to spread knowledge. Perhaps an hour of communication with the Black Spirit race would be equivalent to decades or even centuries of communication with other races. Genius remembered this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 785. The small silver-white cube floated above the totem, spinning and spitting out black cloud-like energy. It gave off a déjà vu of a magic weapon. The evolution energy spread throughout the nest, enveloping the Black Spirit race one by one. All of a sudden, the nest was filled with black cocoons, and rustling sounds could be heard. It sounded like their shells were cracking and undergoing a second growth. Han Zhao's fingertips flashed with mechanical force, and the small silver cube closed with a click. It obediently returned to his hand, and he put it back on his neck. All we have to do now is wait. I wonder what the Black Spirit race will evolve into. Han Shao nodded in his mind. Advanced civilizations more or less had secret technology that others could not decipher. The evolution cube was a relic of a quasi-universal civilization, and the technology contained within had been lost. When it was in Cisco's hands, even the arcane church did not understand the principles behind it. Han Shao had only measured the various parameters of the evolution cube. The restrictions of this universal treasure were relatively fewer. The evolution cube would absorb multidimensional energy and dark energy to recharge itself. The way to use it on a large scale was to cover an area with the evolution energy and evolve all the creatures in the area. This kind of evolution energy belonged to the category of space wonders. It was safe and harmless, surpassing all genetic drugs and genetic hormones. It was as if countless years of natural evolution had been condensed into an individual. They didn't have to wait for long before a clear and crisp sound suddenly blended into the cacophony of rustling sounds. Kacha! One of the black cocoons cracked open, revealing the Black Spirit race inside. The Black Spirit race's original appearance was a strange, pitch-black insect. There was fur between its shells, and its mouth parts were like small awls used to drill through rocks. They did not have eyes, only 4 sensory tentacles that replaced their vision. They had 4 muscular legs and a shovel-shaped shell tail. They looked more like wild beasts and were very ferocious. Now, the appearance of the Black Spirit race had changed drastically. The ratio of the carapace to the muscles became even more harmonious, presenting a streamlined shape. It was much more pleasing to the eye. The fine hairs that grew between the gaps had all fallen off, becoming smooth and glossy. Not a single hair was left. It was much neater. The fangs in their mouths became neat, and of the 4 tentacles on their heads, the top 2 became longer and thicker, hanging behind their heads like hair. However, the bottom 2 disappeared and became indigo blue eyes the size among beans. The sensory tentacles were organs that were formed to adapt to life underground. The Black Spirit race had already started to adapt to the sunlight and try to live on the surface. Originally, it would have taken many years for them to slowly evolve their eyes, but the evolution cube had greatly shortened this process. The Black Spirit race still mainly crawled, but the muscles on their hind legs had become thicker. It seemed that they could easily stand upright. Kacha, with the Black Spirit race being the first to complete their transformation, it seemed to have caused a chain reaction. Large patches of black cocoon shattered, and the brand new Black Spirit race looked around in confusion. The astonishment of the Black Spirit race was transmitted through the mental network layer by layer. In Han Zhao's ears, these inner thoughts sounded like a child's voice. What is this feeling? What a clear vision. Is this what vision is like? The sun is so bright. This was the first time they had normal vision. Countless Black Spirit race members felt that it was novel and adapted to their new organs. Han Xiao suddenly realized that the biggest change in the Black Spirit race was not their appearance, but their mental body. They were born with a mental connection, which meant that the Black Spirit race had extremely high mental talent. Now that this talent had been magnified, the Black Spirit race's brains had become more developed. At this time, a clear voice sounded in Han Xiaoxin's mind, which made him slightly stunned. This voice was not transmitted through the Prophecy Stone chat server, but directly through mental power. God Blackstar, we will always remember the good news you spread. Han Xiao looked over and saw that the Germinal tribe leader was one size larger than an ordinary Black Spirit race member. It was rather conspicuous, and its bean-sized eyes were staring at him. The mental message just now had been sent by it. You can use mental power now. Han Xiao was curious. The Prophecy Stone was the base of the Black Spirit race's mental network. Without this auxiliary tool, the Black Spirit race would not be able to communicate mentally. However, the Germinal tribe leader was able to complete the mental message without the help of the Prophecy Stone. I'm not sure either. I just suddenly felt that I could do it. I think I can still do this. The Germinal tribe leader shook its head, suddenly picked up a small piece of Prophecy Stone, and swallowed it into its stomach. Then, a circle of invisible energy spread out from its head. Fu Ding's expression changed slightly. What a special mental power. It has the aura of the Prophecy Stone. The next moment, the Germinal tribe leader's mental power formed a new mental network. It turned itself into a chat server. It had undergone some kind of positive mutation during its evolution, which greatly stimulated its mental talent. There were dozens of other mutants like it. Han Xiao was shocked. Every Prophecy Stone was equivalent to an individual mental network server. Only the Black Spirit race members in the same server could communicate mentally with each other. The Nest Totem was the entire tribe's main server. Now, there was a mutant that could build its own server, which once again increased the mobility of the race and made it more convenient to coordinate. This meant a lot to a race. Their racial talent had been strengthened as a whole, and they could adapt to more environments. A race with such high potential might really be able to develop into an extremely powerful civilization in the future. Han Xiaoxin was filled with emotions. He had made the right choice by keeping the Black Spirit race. Han Xiao had a feeling that this casual investment would bring him benefits beyond his imagination in the future. After bidding farewell to the Germinal tribe, Han Xiao did the same for the other tribes and completed their evolution. Because the Black Spirit race had migrated together, although the tribes had been separated for 10 years, they were very close to each other. They were scattered around the Germinal tribe, so it did not take much time. Han Xiao had given them the opportunity to transform, and the Black Spirit race was extremely grateful to him, this god. Their faith became even more firm, and they believed that they were a race that was blessed by the gods. After Han Xiao left in the spaceship, the various tribes mobilized to carve new murals. The little person representing Han Xiao floated in the air, and countless Black Spirit race members were worshiping him below. This day was forever recorded in the history of the Black Spirit race. Completing the evolution of the Black Spirit race was faster than Han Xiao had expected. He walked and stopped, looking for a star to train Heber's energy cultivation technique, all the way to the blue star. Welcome home. On the dock, Bennett looked at Han Shao, who was walking down from the spaceship, and smiled like an old friend reuniting. Home. Han Shao was in a daze for a moment before coming back to his senses. He suppressed some of his emotions and sized up Bennett in front of him. Bennett's figure was still tall and straight, and his white hair was neatly combed. Bennett was followed by a group of officers, looking very nervous and fearful. Facing Black Star, the Protector, only Bennett could talk and laugh. The other superiors were all in awe. It had only been a few years since Black Star's annihilation of a country with a single word, and these people still remembered the example of the Six Nations. Facing a galactic figure who could decide the life and death of a regime with a single word, they could not help but feel nervous. However, Black Star's actions back then had shown results in the past few years. From the perspective of the entire civilization, there were indeed benefits to unifying the regime. It greatly reduced internal friction, and decision-making was more efficient. If they entered the galactic society with a divided regime, the current situation of the Luhan Beastmen was an example. You look very energetic. Han Shao nodded and looked at the little boy beside Bennett. Nero raised his head and looked at Han Shao curiously. He had seen Han Zhao's figure in textbooks countless times, and he had even memorized his deeds. This was the first time he had seen him in person. Bennett rubbed Nero's head and smiled. Greet him, Godfather. Nero's tone was timid. Good boy. Han Shao smiled, bent down, and picked Nero up, placing him firmly in his arms. He then tapped Nero's forehead with his finger. Nero was Bennett's child, and Bennett had decided to stay in Blue Star and entrusted his child to him. Naturally, he was willing to take care of his old friend's child. Han Zhao's status was too high, and Nero was originally a little nervous. However, Han Shao was very kind to him, so he quickly relaxed and started laughing from the teasing. Here's a toy for you. Han Shao waved his hand, and nanoparticles flew out from his clothes and quickly turned into a black and gold hovering guard that circled around Nero. This was a high-level orange equipment, and its energy core was a stable dark energy reactor. It could be used for both offense and defense, and it had many functions. A blue and gold spark ignited on Han Zhao's palm and entered the hovering guard. At this moment, he gave this machine a permanent buff, Emperor's Gift, and Machinery Fusion, giving this machine the ability to grow. This hovering guard is a gift for you to protect yourself. You can give it a name. Han Shao pinched his fingers and created a nano-sized neural connection device. He then pressed it and implanted it into the back of Nero's head. There was no pain. He then added, it can move according to your thoughts. However, this thing is very powerful, so it's best not to use it on others, especially not to use it on your father. An orange equipment created by a Beyond Grade A Super was extremely powerful. Even without the mechanical force bonus, this hovering guard could easily deal with a Grade C Super. This type of machine did not have a level restriction, and to low-grade supers, this was equivalent to a divine weapon. He would not even sell it to the players. Nero tried to control the hovering guard, and with a thought, the hovering guard moved according to his thoughts. His eyes lit up as though he had discovered a new continent. Thank you, Godfather. Nero was overjoyed and hugged Han Zhao's neck. Go and play. Han Shao laughed and placed Nero down. He then turned around and headed to the government building with Bennett. Along the way, Bennett began to report the situation. I have issued a gathering order in the various cities, and the gathering work is almost done. I can't do anything about those who missed out. He explained the situation of the evolution cube to the people of Blue Star. Those who wanted to evolve would take the initiative to gather, which would save them a lot of time. However, there were also some who did not want to be gathered. Let those who missed out go. I'm not forcing everyone to evolve. Han Shao shook his head. By the way, I'll let you use it once later. Bennett bitterly smiled. I actually didn't want to use it. You're different. Han Shao waved his hands and said, this involves the evolution of an entire civilization. If you don't personally experience it for the people, how can you be at ease? Bennett helplessly shook his head and did not refute. By the way, there's also Nero. Han Shao paused. Let me bring him into the galaxy this time. I'll help him become a super. He's still too young. Bennett was stunned. The earlier he becomes a super, the better. Since you want Nero to roam the universe in the future, it's best to let him get used to life in the galaxy as soon as possible. Furthermore, with me around, what are you worried about? Do you think I'll kidnap your child? He's my godson, and I'll bring him around the universe for a few months before sending him back. Han Xiao smiled. Sigh, all right then. Bennett was a little hesitant, but nodded in the end. He had chosen to stay on his mother planet, but he did not want to restrict Nero's future because of him. At this moment, Han Xiao suddenly thought of something. The child of an old friend definitely had to be nurtured, and he wanted to check Nero's attributes. Turning around, he saw Nero following behind them, happily playing with his new toy. Han Xiao secretly released a small amount of mechanical force, transforming the nanoparticles into thin metal needles that were hard to see with the naked eye. He remotely controlled the needles to poke Nero's, but, ouch! Nero felt a sharp pain in his, but as if something had poked him. He immediately looked around, but did not discover anything. As he had triggered 1 point of damage, a combat notification popped up on his interface, and Nero's attributes were displayed before his eyes. Han Xiao glanced at it, and his eyes suddenly froze. A look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Nero was still an ordinary child, and his attribute panel was empty. However, there was a dazzling ability in his talent column that made Han Xiao's heart skip a beat. Molding talent, advanced luck glow. This is the same level of luck glow as Fu Ding. This kid is an advanced main character? Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat, and he almost wanted to rub his eyes. Bennett's life in his previous life was completely different, and there was no such character as Nero. This was also the first time he had seen him. Bennett had a low-grade luck glow, but his son had a high-grade luck glow. The probability was way too low. Could it be that this thing could be inherited? At this moment, a bold guess appeared in his mind. Could it be Nero's advanced luck glow has something to do with me? Thinking about it carefully, Nero's father was the leader of the Aquamarine Federation, and his godfather was the famous Black Star. For him to be able to receive the personal grooming of a beyond grade A from a young age, wasn't that great luck? Han Xiao did not expect that his family's vegetable field would grow such high-quality leeks, and he was pleasantly surprised. Even the way he looked at Nero changed. Although Nero was only a little kid now, in Han Xiao's eyes, this kid had already become a treasure that exuded the aura of a European emperor. If it was said that he had only decided to take care of Nero previously because of his relationship with him, now he truly wanted to nurture this potential stock. For such an advanced main character, his future achievements would at least be a calamity grade. What a pleasant surprise! Han Xiao became excited. Chapter 786. The next day, the various governments of Blue Star cities gathered, and the first to accept the Evolution Cube's transformation were the residents of the capital, Black Star City. The spaceship carried Han Xiao, Bennett, and the rest, and slowly flew above the city. The energy released by the Evolution Cube covered the entire crowd. Perhaps this will open a new chapter in the history of the Blue Star civilization. Bennett could not help but sigh. He had already undergone the transformation the night before, so he had a deep understanding of the effects of the Evolution Cube. It was as if he had returned to the prime of his life. His body was filled with energy, and his mind was more agile. Turning around to look at Han Xiao's back, Bennett was filled with emotions. For Blue Star to have its current era, it was all thanks to this old friend of his. 20 years ago, who would have thought that a traitor of the germinal organization could reach such incredible heights? The speed of a spaceship was very fast, and the Evolution Cube was soon spread to every city. Han Xiao did not care about how happy the people were. Naturally, Bennett would take care of the follow-up matters, and he would definitely publicize his contributions. He might even write this story into the textbooks. Han Xiao completed his work and did not plan to stay in Blue Star any longer. He wanted to leave immediately. Sylvia had sent him news that the Red Empire's team had entered the Garten Star system and was about to arrive at the Black Star Corps headquarters. He had to return. The spaceship returned to the dock, and a gentle lady was waiting there with Nero. Bennett brought his officers down from the spaceship and chatted with the lady for a while. He then turned around and pushed Nero's back, indicating for him to get on the spaceship. Go. Your future is the sea of stars. Black Star will take care of you, Bennett said slowly. Nero's eyes were red. Last night, he had found out that he was going to follow his godfather into the universe. He had almost thought that his godfather did not want him anymore and had cried. Bennett had persuaded him for a long time before he finally accepted this matter. He had only read about the Galactic Society in textbooks and on the internet. This was the first time he had entered the universe. Thinking about the strange aliens in the books, he was both scared and excited. With his short legs, Nero climbed up the stairs with much difficulty. Han Xiao stood beside the door and pulled him in. Han Xiao and Bennett looked at each other and nodded. Close the door, Han Xiao ordered. Chi. As the cabin door slowly closed, Nero turned around and saw Bennett and his mother standing on the dock. They had reluctant expressions on their faces as they waved goodbye to him. Crack! The last line of sight disappeared, and the cabin door was tightly locked, as if it was separating two different worlds. Come with me. Han Xiao shook his head and pulled Nero to the cockpit. Nero looked through the porthole and saw the city rapidly shrinking beneath his feet. The blue sky above his head gradually turned dark. Dong! The spaceship shook slightly and left the planet's atmosphere. The blue star's full appearance appeared in front of Nero's eyes. He was dumbfounded and looked at this scene in a daze. This experience was too shocking for a child like him. He grabbed onto Han Xiao's trousers tightly. This was the only support for his young heart. Han Xiao stood quietly by the side with a smile. After the spaceship entered hyperdrive, he pulled Nero out of the cockpit and introduced him to the various galactic knowledge while showing him around the spaceship. There are many things to take note of. You don't have to be nervous. With me here, most people in the universe will not be able to harm you. The two of them came to the hall. Ames, Hela, and the rest of the Black Star Guards were chatting. When they saw Nero, they all had amiable expressions and took turns to tease him. Towards this obedient child, everyone was quite fond of him. Even Hela had put away her unapproachable aura, and her sharp eyes seemed to have softened. This is Uncle Bennett's child. Aurora hugged Nero in her arms and couldn't bear to let him go. She was the youngest here in terms of age and seniority. Now that there was finally someone younger, she was very happy. Furthermore, this was the child of someone she knew. Nero's face turned red, and he froze on the spot, not daring to move. Han Xiao could not help but pull Aurora away and helplessly said, "Stop hugging him. Do you want to suffocate him to death?" Lowering her head to look at her heavy chest, Aurora's face turned slightly red. She snorted and punched Han Xiao's waist. However, to him, it was no different from scratching an itch. Right? Uncle Han, Xiao gave you a present. Let me give you a present too. Aurora's eyes suddenly lit up. She grabbed her chest and pulled out a ball of warm golden energy, which she slapped into Nero's chest. What? What is this? Nero was startled. Immediately after, his body felt warm and comfortable, and an inexhaustible strength appeared in his body. He curiously touched his chest, as though he could not understand how this ball of golden light entered his body. Aurora blinked her eyes and said with satisfaction, "This is my ability. I gave you a ball of refined life energy that will prevent you from getting sick. Furthermore, it will continuously activate your cells and strengthen your body. In the future, you will grow taller and stronger." Not only could her life energy heal people, but it could also increase the target's buff and even stimulate the growth of living beings. For example, the giant white bear that had been left behind in the Black Star Army headquarters to eat and drink every day had indirectly absorbed a large amount of life force from Aurora, turning into a powerful individual. In other words, if one absorbed Aurora's life force for a long period of time, there would be a chance for one to turn from a normal template to an elite template and obtain stronger attributes. Seeing this, Hela, who had been silent all this while, stood up and said, "Then I will give you a present as well." She rubbed her fingers and shot out a red energy ball, which hit the back of Nero's hand. "Ah, The back of Nero's hand felt as though it had been scalded, and he cried out in shock while holding onto the back of his hand with tears in his eyes. He lowered his head and saw a bright red pattern on the back of his hand that extended all the way to his elbow like a tattoo. This is the undead brand. As long as you kill a living being, this brand will absorb the remnant soul of the other party and strengthen your spiritual energy, Hellas said casually. Although it was not appropriate to mention killing to a child, everyone was used to it. Almost everyone present was a calamity-grade super, and all of them had killed hundreds of thousands of people. They would never deliberately describe a fairy tale world to a child. Furthermore, since Nero had been groomed by Black Star, he would definitely not be an ordinary person in the future. Thus, no one avoided this topic. Nero was a little afraid and carefully pulled his sleeves, wanting to cover the tattoo on the back of his hand. Then I will give you something as well. Fu Ding smiled, and his explosive friendliness made Nero relax. Fu Ding released an invisible psychic energy into Nero's mind, forming a calamity-grade psychic barrier to prevent others from prying into his mind or harming him. The Black Star Guard were not stingy and took out all sorts of things to give to Nero. Although they were worthless in the eyes of a calamity-grade super, in the universe, they were all treasures in the eyes of low-grade supers. Looking at this scene, Han Xiao suddenly had a strong sense of déjà vu. Why does this scene look so familiar? Isn't Nero one of those main characters who was groomed by a bunch of old men from a young age? Indeed, it's such an advanced luck glow. Han Xiaoxin found it funny. To have received so many treasures from a young age, this kid's path is really wide. Finally, it was Hardaway's turn. Hardaway touched his body and felt that there was nothing he could take out. Seeing everyone staring at him, he thought for a moment before taking out a deck of Wayne cards and chuckling. Then I will teach you how to play cards. Scram! Bang! Han Xiao stood up, raised his leg, and kicked Hadavi to the ground. The nanoparticles turned into shackles and tied Hadavi up tightly. Nero was shocked and hurriedly retreated. The other Black Star Guards looked left and right, pretending to be enjoying the scenery. Well, Hardaway's mouth was sealed by alloy, and he could not move at all. Only his eyes were rolling around. Lie on the ground and reflect for a while. Han Xiao was furious. Teach someone how to play cards, and you will be struck by lightning. It's fine if you don't use fertilizer, but you want to poison my precious leek? Do you want my leek to follow in her lose footsteps and sink into the abyss of laziness? Ames supported her chin with her hand and smiled at this scene. Suddenly, she waved her hand and signaled for Nero to come over. Nero obediently came before Ames and was a little nervous. Although Ames' attitude was very amiable, the feeling she gave him was completely different from the other Black Star Guards. It was as if there was a special noble aura around her. In front of her, Nero subconsciously became reserved. Don't be nervous. I have something for you too. Ames smiled and suddenly took off the obsidian necklace on her neck and placed it in Nero's hand. Han Xiao was a little surprised. This necklace did not have any special functions, and it was just an ordinary accessory. However, Ames often wore it, so he did not know what was the story behind it. Take good care of it, Ames instructed with a smile. She did not seem to have any intention of explaining herself as she glanced at Han Xiao. Nero hurriedly nodded and carefully kept the necklace. After all the old grandpas had given their treasures, Han Xiao pulled Nero in front of him and asked with a smile, I promised your father that I would nurture you into a powerful super. You must have learned some super classes in Blue Star. Do you still remember the different super classes? Nero nodded and counted with his fingers. There are 5. Pugilist, Esper, Mechanic, Magic, and Psychic. Now, it's your turn to make a choice. Which super do you want to become? Han Xiao smiled. He did not know which super talent Nero had, so he asked directly. Everyone fell silent. Choosing a super class was a huge matter that would decide one's life. Black Star seemed to be prepared to nurture Nero, so his choice was very important. Nero hesitated for a moment before raising his head to look at the floating guards flying above his head. His gaze became firm. Godfather, I want to be a mechanic. Ah, good choice. Han Xiao was overjoyed. Nero had chosen a mechanic class, so he could officially become Han Zhao's student. In the Shattered Star Ring, Han Zhao was the peak of the mechanic class, and no one was more qualified than him to teach others. Hearing that, many of the Black Star Guards sighed. Sigh, isn't it good to be a human? Han Zhao activated Nero's mechanical force on the spaceship. With his current level, the method of activating mechanical force was no longer the electrotherapy that Sylvia had experienced. It was a safer and painless method. Blue Star was very close to the Black Star Corps headquarters, and Han Zhao and the others returned not long after. The next day, the Red Empire's transport fleet finally arrived. The enormous fleet covered the entire sky, and planet Golden Gate seemed to have welcomed a solar eclipse. The Army headquarters became even more lively. The first batch of resources supported by the Red Empire was unloaded in the industrial zone and sent to the Army's warehouse by the mechanical workers. The first batch of Dynasty elites to be modified also stepped onto the dock of the Black Star Corps headquarters. There were 4 captains, and they each brought the elites of their respective factions. Tenny was one of the captains, and he represented the Dynasty's youth faction. This group of elites followed the Army receptionist all the way to the hall, looking straight ahead. Walking into the hall, the Dynasty elites immediately saw Han Zhao, who had been waiting on the throne for a long time. Your Excellency, Black Star. Pa! The tens of thousands of Dynasty elites gave a Dynasty military salute at the same time, and their boots stepped on the metal floor, creating a crisp sound. Han Zhao narrowed his eyes and walked down from the throne. This time, the 4 captains also stepped forward and shook hands with Han Zhao. The 4 of them were all famous NPCs in Han Zhao's previous life, and Tenny was the most famous of them all. There was basically not a single player in the Red Empire camp who did not know this famous Dynasty Marshal. This was also the person that Han Zhao paid the most attention to. Compared to his image in Han Zhao's previous life, the current Tenny was still very young, and his aura was like that of Tiger. When it was Tenny's turn to shake hands, Han Zhao stared at his face and suddenly revealed a mysterious smile. Tenny Amen Los? I've heard a lot about you. Tenny was stunned. Blackstar did not say anything when he shook hands with the others, so why did he only talk to me? I've heard a lot about you. Has my name already spread to the Shattered Star Ring? The intelligence that he had gathered over the past few days appeared in his mind. A few days ago, he had discovered a characteristic of Black Star. This person has some kind of prediction ability and extremely accurate foresight. There must be a reason why he only talked to me. This thought flashed through Tenny's mind, but his expression did not change. He clenched his hand before releasing it. Chapter 787. The Dynasty's elite soldiers did things swiftly and decisively. The 4 of them briefly introduced themselves, did not request a rest, and immediately applied to undergo the modification. Hearing this, Han Zhao did not reject. He would have plenty of time to communicate after the modification was completed. Buzz, with a flash of blue-gold mechanical force, the small silver cube hovered above his head. He entered the password to activate it, and the evolution energy spread out like a tide in the hall, enveloping tens of thousands of elites wearing the Dynasty's standard military uniform. Putting away the evolution cube, Han Zhao looked at the black cocoons in the hall and nodded. Looking at Tenny's black cocoon, Han Zhao curled his lips and thought to himself, "Since you've delivered yourself to me, how can I not invest in you?" He was quite familiar with the life history of his future Dynasty commander. He was one of the famous NPCs of the Dynasty in many versions. Later on, he led many large fleets of the Dynasty independently and was known as the Dynasty's Iron Heel. He had fought many legendary battles and had outstanding performances in many versions. The Dynasty's players could choose to join him and become his soldiers or officers. There were plenty of war missions. Tenny was most famous for 2 things. The first was in the Calamity of the Supers version, where he led his fleet to surround and kill a beyond grade who was causing trouble without the help of any experts. The second was in the invasion of the World Tree Civilization. In order to control the overall situation, he led his fleet to charge into hundreds of star systems and stopped the enemy from invading. He fought his way into the World Tree Civilization's hinterland like a hot knife through butter, buying a lot of time. In the end, his fleet was completely wiped out by the enemy, and he died on the battlefield with countless strong enemies. Tinny's strength was only at the Calamity grade, but he was a very powerful commander, strategist, and fleet commander. He was good at cooperating with large armies, and the dynasty's fleet could display shocking strength in his hands. To the dynasty, such a powerful military talent was even more important than a beyond grade A with individual strength. According to the trajectory of his life, Tinny Aminos would hold a high position in the dynasty in the future. Now that he had the opportunity to make friends with the dynasty's future military boss, Han Shao naturally would not let it go. There were many factions within the dynasty. The first batch of dynasty elites to be modified were the elites chosen from the various factions. Most of the spots have been split up. The military youth faction that Tinny represented was a very powerful faction. He would become one of the representatives of the faction in the future, so it was worth making friends with him. Han Shaoxi knew that even though he had become an ally of the Red Empire, this was only the beginning, and he could not rest easy. Even as an ally, he had to think of ways to increase his influence within the dynasty. After all, he was not the only beyond grade A in the dynasty. I've been operating in the Shattered Star Ring for more than 20 years and can be considered a big shot. However, in the Central Galaxy, there are more beyond grade as than in the Shattered Star Ring, and many of them are veterans who have been around for many years. My influence there is very limited, Han Shao thought. A universal civilization had a huge population, countless strong people, and many allies. The interest network was very complicated. Although he had a high position in the dynasty, his right to speak was pitifully small. This was already taking into account the additional value of the evolution cube. The other three captains beside Tinny were also well-known figures. They did not have as many achievements as Tinny, but since they were leaks that were sent to his door, he decided to take them all in one go. Speaking of which, Han Shao suddenly had an idea. I have the evolution cube, and the Red Empire will keep sending people over. Is this considered waiting for leaks? The evolution lasted for half a day, and tens of thousands of dynasty elites broke out of their cocoons one after another. Tinny was the last to complete his evolution. He stretched out his hand and clenched his fist in front of him, familiarizing himself with the changes in his body. This feels great. Corvus was overjoyed. He originally did not have the qualifications to be chosen, but because he was Tinny's adjutant, he was given this opportunity. It's indeed very magical. It feels even better than the genetic adjustment of the Radiant Federation. Tinny nodded. The newborns of a universal civilization would usually go through free genetic adjustment when they were born to increase their potential. The genetic adjustment technology of the Radiant Federation was far superior to the other two civilizations. This was one of their specialties. The ratio of supers in the Radiant Federation was the highest in the entire galaxy. The Army Affairs officer, who had been waiting by the side, greeted them and said, "Friend from the Red Empire, the Army Commander ordered me to wait here for you to complete your evolution before bringing you to the Army's guest area to rest." Everyone nodded. Some of them were going to follow the dynasty's logistics team to explore the flickering world. The fleet was expected to rest in the Black Star Corps headquarters for a while, so they naturally had to wait. The other group of dynasty elites was only there to undergo evolution and would return to the Central Galaxy after it was done. Tinny was one of them, and Han Shao happened to be planning to go with them. Zoel had already told them, so they had to stay in the Army's headquarters and wait for Han Shao to depart together. They arrived at the guest area and stayed there. Not long after, Han Shao arrived. Tinny and a few other team leaders went out to welcome him. As soon as Han Shao entered, he first asked them how they felt about their evolution. He then changed the topic to the dynasty's internal affairs and started chatting. The elites from the Red Empire were indeed different. Perhaps because they had seen many beyond grade as officers of a universal civilization, their attitude was very natural. They were not nervous or arrogant, sitting together and chatting. He was here to build a relationship with these future dynasty military bigwigs and increase their understanding of each other so that they could become good friends in the future. He had a deep understanding of the people present, so they chatted happily. However, Han Xiao noticed that only Tinny was the calmest. He had been observing him and seemed to be on guard. This was their first interaction, so Han Xiao did not talk too much. He stood up and left after familiarizing himself with each other. Making friends without benefits had to be done step by step. Attacking as soon as they met would easily backfire. After sending Black Star off, Tinny looked at his back and pondered. What is this guy trying to do? Tinny seems to be on guard against me. He doesn't seem to be easy to get along with. Returning to the army commander's office, Han Xiao tapped the table rhythmically with his fingers. It was indeed not easy to make friends with high-level talents. He had to cater to their interests. Han Xiao nodded. This was his advantage. He knew Tinny's hobbies like the back of his hand. This was all hidden information that the players in his previous life had unearthed after countless trials and errors. He wondered just how many strange gifts Tinny had received over the years. He doesn't have high requirements for material objects. He only likes certain types of gifts. He seems to have a habit of collecting Star Course samples. If I remember correctly, he also likes to read mechanical theory books written by high-level mechanics. Sigh. Even outstanding people have such high-end hobbies. Han Xiao shook his head. With such an unpopular hobby, even if he wanted to give a gift, he had to use a more tactful method. Otherwise, it would be easy to expose his purpose. If others knew that he had investigated him, it might have the opposite effect. However, mechanical theory books, Han Xiaoxin thought. I'm a beyond grade A mechanic. He might take the initiative to bring it up. Putting this matter aside for the time being, Han Xiao called Nero, who was being brought around the headquarters by Hela and Reynold. Not long after, Reynold pushed the door open and entered. Army Commander, you're looking for me? I have a mission for you. As he spoke, Han Xiao turned to look at Nero, who was curious about aliens. He smiled and said, Nero, you will learn mechanical theory from Reynold during this period of time. I have to go out and do something. I'll teach you personally after I'm done. Nero was a little anxious and said with grievance, You promised to bring me around the universe. The universe was a completely foreign environment to him, and the only person he could rely on was Han Xiao. Hearing that he would be left alone in the headquarters, Nero panicked. This reminded him of his father, Bennett. He had promised to bring him out to play time and time again, but he would always use work as an excuse, leaving him disappointed time and time again. In his young world, adults would always go back on their words, and he was afraid that Han Xiao would do the same. Don't worry, when I return, I'll definitely bring you to some fun places. Han Xiao comforted him. The Central Galaxy was filled with experts, and he did not know what he would encounter. Nero was too fragile, and he would be in danger if he followed him. Thus, it was better for him to stay in the headquarters. With so many officers and allies looking after him, it would be much safer than following him. Furthermore, Nero had just awakened his mechanical force and needed to learn a lot of theoretical knowledge. Since he had to do his homework, it did not matter where he did it. He had considered leaving Nero under Reynold's tutelage for the time being. While Nero was learning the basics from Reynold, the advanced luck glow might be able to steal this guy's perfect mechanical sense. After all, Nero was a high-level protagonist-type character, and anything was possible. It was too normal for him to awaken a talent. No problem, leave it to me. Reynold nodded. Han Xiao paused for a moment and suddenly thought of something. By the way, is your sister still in the army? Reynold was stunned. She's still here. What's wrong? It seemed like Rosalind had not run away with those 3 kids yet. Han Xiao stroked his chin. Only he and Rosalind knew about this. Even Reynold did not tell him. Then, what has she been doing recently? Has she done anything strange? Strange? I think so. Reynold thought for a moment and said with a serious expression, I realize that she hasn't been going out much recently and has been cooped up in her room. I don't know what she's doing, and she usually doesn't come and chat with me. I've asked her a few times, and she said that she's writing something, but I don't know what it is. Do you need me to help you ask? There's no need. Han Xiao waved his hand. He could roughly guess what Rosalind was doing. She was probably writing the program of the Silver Revolutionary Army. Although the goal of this group of founders was only to overthrow the three universal civilizations and give the other civilizations a chance to make a comeback, helping one ruling class overthrow another ruling class, they naturally could not use this method to incite ordinary people. Rosalind was the spiritual leader, and many of the slogans and ideas were written by her. She also injected her Esper ability into these ideas. He had no intention of interfering with the birth of the Silver Revolutionary Army, because this was the choice of the era. He alone could not stop the wheel of the entire era. In summary, this plot could be considered the first time in the countless years of peace in the exploration era that various advanced civilizations had teamed up to challenge the ruling position of the three universal civilizations. No civilization was willing to be ruled forever. When ambition and strength reached a certain limit, the new strong would inevitably clash with the old hegemony. It was simply unavoidable. Therefore, it would be better to sit back and watch the situation unfold. At least, they would have the upper hand and be easier to deal with than strangers. Han Shao then carried the aggrieved Nero and placed him on his lap. He then called Sylvia and her Luz over and asked, "I'll be heading to the Central Galaxy in a few days. I will go to the Central Galaxy in a few days. Have you prepared the manpower, warships, and resources that I asked you to send?" The three of them nodded. "Very good." Han Shao heaved a sigh of relief. This trip to the Central Galaxy was not for a vacation. He had many things to do. Speaking of which, this was the first time in his life that he was leaving the Shattered Star Ring and heading to another star field. Chapter 788. The main goal of this trip to the Central Galaxy was to meet the upper echelons of the dynasty, enter the circle of the dynasty's allies, and officially step onto the stage of the Central Galaxy from the Shattered Star Ring. Other than that, Han Shao had two other important goals. The first was to try to obtain ultimate knowledges from the dynasty. The dynasty had generously given him all the cutting-edge knowledges of the mechanic class, but the value of ultimate knowledges was even higher. Even beyond grade A allies had to make a certain amount of contributions to obtain them. The dynasty being willing to give him all the cutting-edge knowledges at once was generous, but keeping the ultimate knowledges was a rule. The status of a beyond grade A ally in universal civilization was similar to a consecration, and the resources were not given for free. Han Shao estimated that he would only be able to apply for ultimate knowledges after he finished exploring the flickering world. He wanted to go to the Central Galaxy and see if he could obtain them earlier. Due to the experience penalty from the evolution cube, his strength had temporarily reached a bottleneck. Han Shao was prepared to look for other ways to increase his strength like the other beyond grade As. Other than talents, blueprints, and skills, there were class knowledges. The rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Ultimate knowledges greatly increased the strength of any class. The highest he had was only cutting-edge knowledges, and his King's Mentor ability required ultimate knowledges to activate. His second goal was to develop his leak farm. The Shattered Star Ring was only the region of a portion of the players. There were also a large number of players in the other star fields. In the past, due to the distance and the army's insufficient strength, Han Shao could not help them. Now that he had the opportunity to borrow the Red Empire's military cross-star field channel, he could bring his people to develop new leak farms in the dynasty's territory. This way, the fame he had accumulated among the players over the past 3 versions would come in handy. The name of the Black Star Corps was also attractive to the players of the other star fields. The players of the Shattered Star Ring were the best example. He might be able to bring some of the Central Galaxy's players back and take the leak seedlings of others back to his own farm. Han Zhao's lips curled up. This time, I might be gone for 2 to 3 months and will return before the flickering world officially opens. During this time, I'll leave the matters of the army to you guys. It's all thanks to you bringing back so many allies from the Shattered Star Ring. Our partners are all over this star field, and the expansion of the army is coming to an end. As long as we digest these gains according to the plan, we will stabilize. You don't have to worry. Sylvia had a serious expression. I'm not worried about you guys. Han Shao smiled and nodded. After a series of operations, The Black Star Corps had officially transformed into a beyond grade A organization and become a giant in the Shattered Star Ring. Their network of interests covered the entire star field. According to the established blueprint, more than 10,000 subbases would be built one after another, distributed in more than 10 star clusters and many star systems in Shattered Star Ring. The expansion of their businesses was also very smooth. Through the channels provided by their partners in various industries, they had officially stepped into many business areas. The new businesses included financial group trading, intelligence selling, tourism transportation, machinery production, and so on. The core businesses were still the three main businesses: mercenary business, resource mining business, and military alliance business. These three were the pillars of the army. Among the many businesses, the only one that could not be replicated was the benefits brought by the evolution cube. There was only one evolution cube, so it naturally became the specialty of the Black Star Corps. It was because of this that the expansion of the Black Star Army had been so smooth. They had always been successful. The evolution cube was also open to the members of the army and required contribution points to exchange for the right to use it. It was because of this specialty that the army attracted far more newcomers than expected, which laid the foundation for the large-scale expansion of the army. With the Tyrant's ceasefire and Cisco's surrender, there was no organization in this area that could threaten the army's position. It could be said that the Shattered Star Ring had become the headquarters of the Black Star Corps. The army had established a strong foundation here, and the next step was to open up a new market. I will take some of the Black Star Guards with me. The high-level combatants here will be handled by Deputy Commander Loggy. Don't let him slack off. Han Shao suddenly thought of something and added, also announce to the entire army that I have been invited to the Red Empire. No problem. Sylvia did not ask why. Since he was going to open up a new market, Han Shao did not plan to let go of the players' information channels. He could release the information through the forums to let the players in the Central Galaxy be mentally prepared. Anyway, the army players were like free spammers, so it would be a waste not to use them. Leaving the headquarters this time, Han Shao was not afraid of others causing trouble. The Tyrant had become an ally, and they had established a ceasefire agreement. Causing trouble would not benefit him. Cisco also temporarily stopped. Han Shao had obtained political protection through the Blue Star Civilization conference seat. If Cisco attacked the army while he was not around, it would be breaking the rules. Furthermore, Cisco had his own race to take care of, so he would not dare act rashly. Furthermore, the current situation was different from when he was with Cisco. The evolution cube was now with Han Shao, and if he wanted it, he could only snatch it. Thus, attacking the Black Star Corps was meaningless. It was the same for ES God. As for enemies below the beyond grade A level, Han Shao was even less worried. With so many calamity-grade officers in the army, anyone who dared to cause trouble was simply looking for trouble. After resting for 2 days, the fleet heading to the Central Galaxy officially gathered. Today was the day they set off. The fleet consisted of 3,500 battleships, and the main ships were 3 satellite bases. Although the satellite bases were bulky, they were also equipped with hyperdrive devices. It was just that their warp speed was not high. Han Shao did not mass-produce the Eternal Light flagship. As an ally of the Red Empire, using the Radiant Federation's flagship was too ostentatious. Han Shao treated it as a secret weapon, secretly building it and storing it in the warehouse. He did not plan to use it publicly for the time being. Tenny and the other elites of the dynasty were invited by Han Shao to board the same battleship. In the command room, all the members were in position, staring at Han Zhao's back, waiting for orders. In front of the huge porthole, Han Shao and Aim stood side by side, looking at the sea of stars outside. The light from the thrusters of the surrounding battleships shone on their faces, leaving behind mottled shadows. Are you sure you want to go? It's not like I haven't been to the Central Galaxy before. Aim smiled. I'll just treat it as a vacation. Aesop stroked his beard and said, just nice, I'll go back and visit my old friends. Han Shao nodded, retracted his gaze, and spoke with a deep voice. His voice sounded in the communication channel, spreading to every battleship. Let's go. Rumble. The hull trembled slightly, and it began to accelerate, leaving the Black Star Corps headquarters. The surrounding spaceships followed one after another, and the fleet set off. Very soon, the spaceships turned into streams of light, disappearing into the dark universe. When the fleet set off, countless army members watched from the headquarters satellites. Sylvia followed Han Zhao's instructions and announced Han Zhao's whereabouts to the entire army. Everyone knew that the army commander had received an invitation from the Red Empire to meet the dynasty's leader. That was the leader of the three universal civilizations, the person with the highest status in this universe. Countless army members were excited and proud. The army players became active on the forums, full of surprise. Black Star was the first person they were familiar with to cross servers. This news ignited the passion of the players in the various star fields. All along, the Shattered Star Ring had enjoyed the benefits of the Black Star Corps, and the players in the other star fields were envious. With so many deeds of the Black Star Corps circulating on the forums, and the recent news of Han Zhao becoming a Beyond Grade A Super had caused a huge commotion. The benefits of the army had long been known to the players in the various star fields. In comparison, the players in the other star fields realized that the benefits of their factions were not worth mentioning at all. Now, the chance to come into contact with the Black Star Corps had arrived. The players in the Central Galaxy were overjoyed, and this topic blew up their forums. The Black Star Corps is finally going to cross star fields. Haha, that's great. We also have the chance to join the Black Star Corps. Sigh, what a pity. If only we came to the primeval Star River. The players in the Shattered Star Ring did not have any other thoughts. The better the Black Star Corps developed, the more proud they would be. At the same time, they felt that it was refreshing. Perhaps the army commander would bring the players from the other star fields back? To the players at the current stage, crossing star fields was too difficult. They did not have the qualifications to use the stargates to cross star fields, and they could not afford spaceships that could travel at high warp speeds. Furthermore, they had not even finished exploring the star field they were born in. The players of the various star fields were currently playing their own games. They would only interact with each other in the professional arena. Normally, they wouldn't meet at all. Maybe the Black Star Corps will be the faction that guides us to cross star fields in the future. The possibility is very high. Now that the army has become allies with a universal civilization, and the next step is to explore the flickering world, it's like opening the era of crossing star fields for us. There were many different opinions on the forums. At the same time, in Bloodshed Land, Black Star has set off? Yes, just now. Heber sat on the throne with his fist supporting the side of his face. He looked in the direction of the palace gate and aimlessly looked into the distance. As an ally of the Red Empire, he had been to the Red Empire a long time ago and had received an invitation like Han Zhao. His gaze seemed to have passed through the vast universe, and an indescribable emotion flashed through Heber's eyes. He seemed to have recalled some memories. Those guys in the Central Galaxy are not so friendly. Central Galaxy, Red Empire's mother planet. Trunamir Palace was where the dynasty's government affairs were conducted. Including the dynasty's leader, the core upper echelons were all there. It was extremely large and was a city of its own on the mother planet. This was the center of the dynasty's power. It was solemn and heavily guarded, and almost none of the government officials spoke. Two people, one tall and one short, walked side by side in a long corridor in Trunamir Palace. The warm light shone in from the windows on the left, and their shadows were reflected on the wall. When the government officials saw the two of them, they all showed respect and stood where they were, bowing their heads to show their respect. I've gathered you this time to meet the new ally. I think his name is Black Star? Yes, he came from the Shattered Star Ring and only became a Beyond Grade A recently. Oh, a new Beyond Grade A from the Shattered Star Ring. I can't remember when was the last time a new Beyond Grade A was born there. I can't remember either. Isn't that Heber also from the Shattered Star Ring? Is he coming this time? I don't think so. Sigh. That's boring. Not necessarily. According to the data, this new ally is the fastest super to become a Beyond Grade A in history. His combat strength is not low. Heber and Cisco both fought him to a draw. Furthermore, he has the nickname Indestructible Body. Although he's a mechanic, his body is extremely tough. Oh, now that's interesting. I wonder who is more resilient between him and Heber. The two of them chatted casually and walked further and further away. Chapter 789. The central galaxy and shattered star ring were separated by a few star fields, with a large number of desolate universe belts in between. The distance was very far. Back then, even if ES God subordinates took a super high warp speed spaceship, it still took them a few years to cross this distance through hyperdrive. If it was a normal non-hyperdrive flight, the travel time would probably be measured in hundreds of millions of years. The first stop of the fleet was the Interstar Field Stargate that the Red Empire had built in the Shattered Star Ring. The Interstar Field Stargate could greatly shorten the travel time, and it was the only stable and fast way to cross star fields. Naturally formed wormholes were not included in this. The longer the distance of the Stargate, the more difficult it would be to accurately locate it. The Interstar Field Stargate was a technological threshold that even star cluster civilizations could not achieve. The superstar cluster civilizations did have this technology, but the three universal civilizations had made a rule that no civilizations other than them were allowed to build interstellar field stargates. Therefore, the interstellar field stargates between star fields were all products of the three universal civilizations, controlled by them, and divided into civilian and military uses. Han Shao and the others were planning to use the Interstar Field Stargate, which was more convenient and faster. As the dynasty's high-level allies, they naturally had the authority. I've already informed the guards at the Interstar Field Station. Once you report your identity, they will let you through and help you activate the Interstar Field Stargate. When you arrive at the Constellation Corridor, there will be dynasty troops there to receive you, Zoe said. Zoel said through the communicator. The Central Galaxy was the collective name of the mother star fields of the three universal civilizations, forming the center of the universe. These three star fields were the abyss of stars under the Radiant Federation, the bright silver arm under the Arcane Church, and the Constellation Corridor, the territory of the Red Empire. The Red Empire's Interstar Field Station in the Shattered Star Ring was located in a star cluster at the edge of the Shattered Star Ring. From the Black Star Corps headquarters, using the various star cluster level stargates and hyperdrive, it would take more than half a month to arrive. Han Shao stayed in the fleet and communicated with Tinny and the other dynasty elites along the way. With his identity and status, coupled with the fact that they were on the same ship every day, most of them had formed a preliminary friendship with Han Shao. Only Tinny's attitude remained lukewarm. He was suspicious by nature, and it was his habit to be vigilant. However, Han Shao knew Tinny's personality quite well. If he took the initiative to please him, it would only cause him to be even more vigilant. Furthermore, it was unlikely that a beyond grade it would lower himself to please a dynasty colonel. Therefore, Han Shao showed a fair attitude and never talked to Tinny alone. Based on Tinny's hobby, Han Shao decided to wait for him. As a mechanic, there was a high chance that Tinny would take the initiative to ask for guidance. After all, he was a member of the dynasty, and spending time with him was the best opportunity to ask for guidance. Although he did not know why Tinny was so wary, it did not seem like there was a need to give up on such an opportunity. After setting off for about 10 days, Han Shao finally heard Tinny knocking on his door. "You want to learn my mechanical skills?" In the room, Han Shao got Philip to control the hovering housekeeping robot to deliver 2 cups of calming green plant drinks to the table. He then looked at Tinny and his adjutant, Corbooze, on the opposite side of the table. Tinny nodded slowly. He did not touch the drinks on the table and said, "It's not really learning. I just want to communicate with you." Since he had a favor to ask of Han Shao, he naturally would not show a cold face. He put away part of his vigilance and humbled himself with a sincere attitude. To him, there was nothing embarrassing about this. No matter what achievements he had in the future, he was only a dynasty colonel for now. There was a huge gap between his status and Han Xiao's. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed, but he did not show it on his face. He tapped the table with his finger and asked, "I only know that you're a mechanic, but I've never heard you say which branch you're leaning towards. Pure mechanic, arm branch. I crossed the grade A boundary 2 years ago and became a calamity grade, Tenny said. Although I'm not from the arm branch, I can still impart some experience to you. Han Xiao smiled. As a beyond grade A, he was qualified to teach others. That's my request. Tenny nodded. Every beyond grade A mechanic had something they were good at. Some had a unique style, and some had unique skills. With Tenny's current level, it was very difficult for him to come into contact with a beyond grade A mechanic. Now that there was someone like Blackstar, he did not want to miss the opportunity to learn from him. When he first learned that he was going to be modified, he already had this idea. After observing Han Xiao for a while, he decided to put it into action. Han Xiao talked with him for a few hours, and Tenny felt that he had benefited a lot. That's all for today. Han Xiao stopped talking, and a smile appeared on his face. He tapped his temple and said, I just sent some theoretical information to your communicator. Some of it is my experience, and some of it is the technical theories I collected. Take a look. Hearing this, Tenny nodded and said, Thank you. You're welcome. Han Xiao waved his hand, held back his laughter, and said casually, Anyway, there's nothing much on the way. If you have anything you want to ask, you can come and find me. Okay. Tenny forced a smile, and his attitude became better. After all, he had taken advantage of Han Xiao's kindness. Han Xiao knew that he had to take the benefits in moderation, so he did not continue. Tenny bowed and left the room. His footsteps were much lighter. Looking at Tenny's back being separated by the door, Han Xiao shook his head and smiled. He was quite satisfied. With this relationship, their relationship had room to continue improving. Their affinity was about to reach friendly. With my identity, it's much easier to make friends with high-ranking people. Han Xiao sighed. If it were a player, there would be almost no way to make friends with Tenny. However, his situation was different. The current Tenny was not as accomplished as he was in his previous life. Han Xiao's status was higher than Tenny's, and Tenny was the dynasty's ally. Under many factors, even if Tenny seemed to be wary, he still came to Han Xiao's door. With Han Xiao's current status, it was much easier for him to gain character favorability compared to the players. In the next 10 days or so, Tenny would come to ask for guidance every other day. The relationship between the two of them gradually became friends. As the saying went, the one who reached the top would be the teacher. This future marshal of the dynasty was interacting with Han Xiao as a student. Of course, due to his identity, he could not really be Han Xiao's student. However, beyond grade, as did not have the obligation to impart their experience. Han Xiao being so generous was a huge favor to him. Although Tenny was suspicious, he was not someone who could not differentiate good from bad. He remembered this favor in his heart, and naturally would not stay away from Han Xiao. On the other hand, every time Tenny came to ask for guidance, he would bring Corbu's along. Han Xiao also had a certain understanding of this person. This adjutant was loyal to Tenny, and Tenny treated his subordinates really well. Thus, Corbu's received quite a lot of benefits from following him. Han Xiao felt that he might be able to do something with Corbu's. Just like chasing a girl, bribing her best friend was a shortcut. Although he could not bribe Tenny's loyal subordinate, with how Tenny took care of Corbu's, if he did Corbu's a huge favor, Tenny might have a better impression of him. Half a month later, the fleet finally arrived at the dynasty's military Stargate station in the Shattered Star Ring. In the dark universe, a hexagonal Stargate floated. Dense space energy flowed within the gate, forming a dark blue vortex. Around it were the dynasty's heavy universe fortresses with guards stationed there. Unlike the civilian stations, there were no spaceships entering or exiting the Stargate. It was only supplied to the dynasty's troops. As the fleet approached, this Stargate continued to expand in their vision. As they got closer, the edges of this Stargate seemed to extend to the end of their vision. It was extremely huge and spectacular. Alert! Alert! Psionic annihilation, cannon locked on. The artificial intelligence of the main ship that Han Xiao was on sent out the alert. Everyone's expression did not change. They already knew that once they entered the range of the military Stargate, they would be locked on by the guards. Stop moving forward. Report your identity. The artificial intelligence of the main ship received a message from the guards. Black Star. Han Shao verified his identity. After a while, they received a message confirming their identity. The guards removed the cannon lock and signaled for the fleet to move forward. This time, the main ship received a communication request from the guards. After connecting, a person who seemed to be the commander appeared on the screen and spoke with a deep voice. Your Excellency Black Star, Ambassador Zoel has already instructed us to set up a route for you in advance. This Stargate teleportation is direct mode. The teleportation location is Crimson Ring Constellation Star Zone 8, directly entering the Dynasty's territory. There will be a team of guards sent by the Mother Planet to pick you up. They will open a special spiritual flight path for you and bring you to the second jump. Only then will you be able to pass through the psionic seal ring around the Mother Planet and reach the Dynasty's Mother Planet. Han Shao nodded. Universal civilizations all had powerful weapons. In order to prevent each other from going crazy one day and using beyond visual range primordial psionic energy to destroy their mother planet, the mother planets of all universal civilizations had all kinds of cutting-edge barriers and defense measures. It was as if they were wrapped in layers of filters. Only certain methods could be used to enter and exit. Normal flight was not possible at all. Then, this commander looked at Tenny on the side and pulled out a smile on his seemingly paralyzed face. Tenny, long time no see. It's you. Tenny's expression was a little strange. Why are you guarding the Stargate here? This is an order from the superiors. This commander shook his head. There was a hint of bitterness in his eyes, but he immediately suppressed it. This commander and Tenny were both graduates of the Dynasty's Journey, Advanced Military Academy, in the same period. They knew each other, and their results were also very outstanding. They should have had a bright future, but Tenny did not expect him to be sent to guard Stargate. Guarding a Stargate was not a good job, especially a military Stargate. There was not much chance to contribute, and they would have to take responsibility if something went wrong. However, for the safety of the Stargate, they had to send out elite troops to guard it. Therefore, the officers guarding the Stargate were either randomly sent over or unlucky people who were ostracized in the faction wars. No one would take the initiative to choose this position. Hearing this, Tenny knew that this friend of his had clearly suffered greatly in the faction wars. He shook his head helplessly and said, "Then, guard it well. You'll be transferred away in a few years anyway. Treat it as training your troops." The rotation period of the troops guarding the Stargate was not long. Usually, it would be changed once every 6 to 10 years. The Dynasty would not sit back and watch their elite troops be wasted at the Stargate station. After chatting for a while, this commander ended the communication. At this moment, the fleet was about to enter the Stargate. An extremely strong suction force came from the other side of the Stargate, trying to pull them all in like a black hole. The fleet entered the Stargate, and the world outside the porthole lit up instantly. The interior of the Stargate was filled with violent space energy, but it was restrained by the Stargate technology and built a stable path. It was like a beast had turned into a tame pet. The movement of the spaceship seemed to have stopped. No one could feel any sense of speed. It was as if the fleet had stopped moving in the Stargate. However, it seemed like only an instant had passed. The spaceship suddenly shook, and the space energy around it disappeared like a receding tide. The scene outside the porthole became a pitch-black universe, dotted with gem-like starlight again. The Stargate that was originally at the front was now at the back of the fleet. The distribution of the fortresses around it had also changed. The number of troops guarding this Stargate station was more than 10 times larger than before. A special fleet was waiting in front of everyone. The appearance of the spaceship was different. It seemed to be a very unpopular spaceship model. Beep, beep. At this moment, every quantum network receiving terminal received a regional broadcast from this special fleet. Welcome to the Central Galaxy, Your Excellency Black Star. Chapter 790. Welcome to the Central Galaxy, Your Excellency Black Star. I'm here. This is the center of the universe. Han Zhao's eyes flickered. As the regional broadcast sounded, this strange-looking fleet slowly moved forward. The main ship of the fleet received a communication request from the other party, and an officer wearing the dynasty's high-level military uniform appeared on the screen. He had two small tufts of mustache and looked very shrewd. I'm the commander of the 17th Guard of the dynasty's mother planet. I'm here to welcome our allies who have come from afar. Han Xiao sized him up and raised his brows. This commander was not a big shot, but he was familiar with him. In his previous life, when the players went to the dynasty's mother planet, they had to go through a lot of checks. In the end, it was the mother planet guards who led them through the restrictions. These mother planet guards were like a group of old men guarding the door, and they were all familiar faces to the players. Thank you for your hard work, Han Xiao said politely. Please follow me. Then this mother planet guard turned around and left. The fleet followed the route and flew slowly behind. This is your first time in the Central Galaxy, right? Im suddenly said and looked at Han Xiao. Han Xiao did not comment. He knew the environment of the Central Galaxy like the back of his hand, but according to his resume, this was his first time here. Let me introduce you. Im shook her head. She would occasionally come to the Central Galaxy to look for Aesop while traveling, so she was quite familiar with this place. Since Black Star had never been here before, she felt that she had to help Han Xiao understand the situation here. Hearing Ames's introduction, Han Xiaoxin felt a little strange. Why did he feel like he was a country bumpkin entering the city for the first time? After listening for a while, Aesop chimed in. The Central Star Field is different from the other star fields. All the star system and star cluster civilizations here are vassals controlled by the three empires. The civilizations in the other star fields have different standpoints, but here they are one entity. The security here is the best among all the star fields. Other than some thugs like ES God, other small groups like galactic pirates and rogues can't be seen here. The moment they appear, they will be discovered and eliminated by the three universal civilizations. Han Xiao nodded. The three universal civilizations dominated the Central Galaxy, and this was their base. It was basically under their complete control. Maintaining order was maintaining their own rule. Naturally, they would not allow this to happen. The two fleets left the Stargate station and stopped in space. The guard commander spoke. Please wait a moment. I will now open the spiritual flight channel for everyone and bring you into the homeworld. With that said, the Mother Planet Guard's battleship shot out beams of blue and green, gathering into a light spot in the distance. A circle of blue and green halo gradually enlarged, as though it had turned into a portal. Inside the portal was a sea of green. The psionic flight passage is a passage that allows you to jump safely within the psionic seal band. Once you enter the passage, your spaceship will receive a psionic coding formed by a special code and energy circuit, allowing you to avoid the annihilation of the psionic seal band, the Mother Planet Guard commander explained. The psionic seal ring was like layers of shields covering the homeworld and blocking all kinds of planetary annihilation cannons. This shield was not a shield in the ordinary sense. It covered half of the Crimson Ring star system, and the buffer zone was extremely vast. Only a universal civilization could afford such a thing. The spiritual coding was one of the advanced energy applications. Different codes and energy circuits were like different passwords. The wrong code structure would not be able to enter the respective psionic seal ring. It was like a combination of a security pass and a key. The fleet entered the dark green light gate, and as though they were passing through a bubble, the spaceships were wrapped in a layer of colorful film. Then the guards also drove in, and the gate slowly closed. The guards led the way at the front, and Han Xiao and the others followed closely behind. It would be bad if they went to the wrong place inside the psionic seal ring. The two troops turned into streams of light, constantly changing their route like marbles, advancing along the safe route. On the ship, Tenny also casually chatted with Han Xiao, mentioning the situation of the homeworld. The psionic seal ring was built during the exploration era. At that time, it was to prevent the planetary annihilation cannons of the advanced civilizations. The space within the ring can be considered a sealed new world. During the war, the scientists adjusted the physical constants inside for safety. During peacetime, these changed physical constants were equivalent to pollution. We spent a lot of effort to control it, and only then did the sealed world, where the home world was returned to normal. The technology of the three universal civilizations is much more powerful than before. Aesop stroked his beard and sighed. Resources, talents, and technology are highly concentrated. Their development speed is far beyond the second-tier supercluster civilizations. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. I really don't know what else can shake your rule. Han Shao scratched his eyebrows and did not say anything. At this time, the two fleets passed by an area. Through the porthole, they could see a ball of blue light shining in the distance. Seeing Han Shao look over, Tinny took the initiative to explain. That's a ball of primordial psionic energy. Don't get close, or we'll be assimilated and devoured. This is one of the defense mechanisms of the Seal Ring. After flying in hyperdrive for 2 days, the ship suddenly shook and finally left the psionic Seal Ring. A dark red planet the size of a sesame seed appeared in their vision. That's the dynasty's capital, planet Crimson Ring. With planet Crimson Ring as the main planet, there are 16 satellites around it, 60 large official orbital living stations, and many space bases. The population is 470 billion. Corboos, who was beside Tenny, said proudly. Han Shao clicked his tongue and said, "The housing prices must be very high, right?" "That's right, but your focus seems a little strange." Corboos' mouth twitched. "I said that the mother planet is majestic, and you asked me if the housing prices are high. Are we talking about the housing prices?" As the fleet got closer, they could see the details of Planet Crimson Ring. Planet Crimson Ring was extremely large. The Red Empire had artificially modified the size of the mother planet. 16 relatively small satellites orbited it. These celestial satellites were brought over by the dynasty using technology to offset most of the gravity and expand the habitable area of the mother planet. The surface of the planet was filled with buildings. There were also many large orbital living stations and many space fortresses around the planet. The capital of a universal civilization. It's indeed spectacular to see it with my own eyes. Ames praised softly. This was also her first time coming to the capital of the Red Empire, and it was all thanks to Han Shao. "I came here once when I was still an ancient one, but the grandeur was not as grand as yours." Aesop sighed. "I wonder if the national pillars of the Crimson Dynasty still remember me. I've only met them once." Following the instructions, the fleet stopped at a spaceport. The Black Star Corps members stayed on the ship while Han Shao and the others boarded the spaceship prepared by the Red Empire and headed toward Planet Crimson Ring. He purposely did not bring the army players on this trip. The players were too unpredictable, and it would not be good if they caused trouble there. Furthermore, if he brought the players of the Shattered Star Ring over, he might not be able to bring them back. He was there to poach them, not to give them away. As they got closer to Planet Crimson Ring, the buildings on the surface became clearer. The Red Empire was known for being ruthless, hardworking, and pragmatic. Compared to the Radiant Federation and the Arcane Church, the culture of the Empire was not as developed. The architectural style was square, angular, thick, and symmetrical. They liked red, black, and metallic gray. The spaceship slowly landed outside a huge city. The sunlight of the artificial star covered the square buildings with a golden veil. This was the main city of the dynasty's mother planet, Turinamir Palace. It was the center of power of the entire dynasty. It was huge and had its own city. A group of receptionists had been waiting at the dock for a long time. They walked up and said, "Your Excellency Black Star, we are the team in charge of receiving guests. Please follow me to the dynasty's reception center in Turinamir Palace to rest for the night. Tomorrow, the dynasty's leader will personally meet Your Excellency Black Star." Okay, Han Shao had no objections. He then looked at Tenny and the other dynasty elites. "What about you guys?" Tenny shook his head. "We're going to the military to report. We're not going the same way." Hearing this, Han Shao nodded. He casually summoned an orange hovering guard array made by a beyond grade, and gave it to Tenny. "This is for you to protect yourself. I don't know when we'll see each other again. Let's contact each other more often. Tenny was stunned. He took the set of machinery, looked at Han Xiao deeply, and said, "Okay." Han Xiao did not neglect the other elite officers. He casually gave them some machinery as a sign of goodwill. He had plenty of machinery in his inventory. Mechanical weapons made by a beyond grade A super were still quite valuable to a calamity grade mechanic. Watching Tenny and the others leave, Han Xiao secretly raised his brows. If not for the opportunity to accept the modification, he would not have had the chance to come into contact with these future dynasty big shots. He had made some connections along the way, built a foundation, and gained quite a lot. He did not know if there would be another chance like this in the future. After the dynasty elites left, only Han Xiao, Ames, Aesop, Hela, and the rest of the Black Star Guards were left. They followed the receptionist through the military alert zone and entered Trunomir Palace. However, the moment they stepped into the city, 7 energy waves suddenly burst out from the city. Boom! Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and stopped. These 7 auras were all beyond grade A supers. This lasted for only an instant before the 7 auras were attracted. They did not have any intention of provoking him, but just wanted to show him their existence. Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. 7 beyond grade as they should be the dynasty's experts and allies. He thought about it. This was not a show of strength, but more like a beyond grade A greeting to him. Your Excellency Black Star, in order to welcome you, the dynasty has specially gathered the national pillars under us. Other than the beyond grade, as who have matters to attend to or are far away, the rest who are free have all come, the receptionist said. After the meeting with the Empire's leader tomorrow, we will arrange for the national pillars to meet with you. National pillars, these guys have quite a nice name. Han Xiao smiled casually. What are you talking about? The receptionist laughed. You're now also a national pillar of our Red Empire. That newcomer is here. In a certain room in Trunomir Palace, a few figures of different appearances sat on the sofa and looked in Han Xiao's direction with interest. Their gazes seemed to be able to penetrate the layers of buildings. He didn't respond to us. Seems like it's his first time seeing so many beyond grade as together. He doesn't know the rules. It's normal for someone from the Shattered Star Ring not to know. The woman beside him is also a beyond grade. Dragon Emperor Ames. I know her. That old man beside her looks familiar. Hey, that guy seems to be one of you ancient ones, the one who knows how to make prophecies. It's him, I remember. This new ally seems quite interesting. The evolution cube is in his hands. Don't go overboard tomorrow. I still want to borrow it. Chapter 791. The guest houses in Trunomir Palace were all single-family villas. Han Xiao and the others followed the receptionist into one of the villas, which was their temporary residence. After settling down, Han Xiao locked himself in his room and thought about what to do the next day. Tomorrow, I'll be meeting with the dynasty's leader and those beyond grade as. What will the dynasty's leader talk to me about? Other than welcoming me as a formality, he might also ask me to use the evolution cube here on a large scale, invite me to participate in some activities, and announce that the dynasty has a new bargaining chip before pushing me onto the stage. As for those beyond grade, as they'll accept me into their circle. We're all allies and stand on the same side, helping each other. He knew the list of the dynasty's beyond grade A members, and he also knew the personalities and preferences of some of them. However, he did not know who these 7 people were. Many of the beyond grade, as of universal civilizations, are veterans who have lived for many years. They have a lot of talents, skills, and energy. Han Xiao pondered. He felt that the meeting with the beyond grade as tomorrow would most likely not be so easy. It would not be a simple meeting. Beyond grade, as were all individuals who had great strength. Strength was the foundation of their footing. A newcomer who squeezed into their circle would most likely be tested. Even if the weak were accepted into the circle, they would still be marginalized. Only the strong would have more right to speak. The dynasty's beyond grade A allies were also led by the 3 strongest individuals. Han Xiao did not know how many of them came this time. Although my combat strength is not bad, It's only barely past the threshold of beyond grade A. Some of my attributes are still not high enough. I've already practiced half of the Heber Stellar Furnace training technique, which gave me nearly 10,000 energy points. My machinery aspect is much more complete, though. During this time, other than dealing with the affairs of the army, Han Xiao also spent a lot of his free time building machinery and stocking up. The cutting-edge knowledges had long been completed. Through these technologies, Han Xiao had integrated many new machinery blueprints. Other than increasing the size of his mechanical army, he had also built some high-level machinery with various functions, using the mechanic method to steadily increase his strength. Han Xiao's eyes suddenly flashed. Since I understand some of the information of these beyond grade, as maybe I can make the first move tomorrow, after sleeping for a night, an envoy from the Empire came to visit early the next morning. Hela opened the door and saw the emissary standing outside with a respectful expression. "Hello, the Empire ruler wishes to meet with His Excellency Black Star." "Let's go." Han Xiao walked out of the room and nodded. Hela and the others wanted to follow, but Han Xiao waved his hand, indicating for the Black Star Guards to stay. Seeing this, the emissary who wanted to dissuade them swallowed his words back into his stomach. The airspace above Trinomir Palace was a no-fly zone. The two of them boarded the land-hovering vehicle that had been waiting for them at the entrance and headed straight to the city center. At the center of the city was the highest-level office area in the Empire. There was a huge and magnificent palace, which was also the main body of the Trinomir Palace. The closer they got to the center, the tighter the security became. There were sentries everywhere, and all kinds of mechanical detection equipment covered this area. Teams of elite supers patrol the area at all times. With just a glance, Han Xiao could sense the auras of no less than 10 calamity-grade supers, and this was only one of the directions. The security of the capital city was extremely strong. Not only did the universal civilizations control the central galaxy, but they also had a certain degree of control over the other star fields. They were rich in human resources, and there were all kinds of advanced super academies to nurture talents. The ratio of calamity-grade supers was the highest in the entire galaxy. With these two factors, the universal civilizations had countless experts under them. The vehicle stopped outside the palace, and Han Xiao followed the emissary in. After passing through many checkpoints, they took the internal hovering elevator all the way to the top floor. This floor was the office area of the dynasty's leaders. After passing through the sentry and secretary area, the emissary pushed open a door and gestured for Han Xiao to enter. Han Xiao nodded at him and walked in. The layout of the room entered his eyes. This was a spacious office with a rectangular structure. The walls were reddish-brown, and there were floor-to-ceiling windows on every side. The floor was covered with a red carpet, and there were green potted plants in the corner. They seemed to have been carefully taken care of, giving off a calming fragrance. 2 rows of bookshelves were pressed against the wall, and on the other side was a small round white stone table and a red sofa used for receiving guests. There was no furniture on the floor in the middle of the room, and there was a huge chandelier above. Further back, there was an office desk, and a figure was sitting behind the desk, and beside him stood a second person with his hands clasped behind his back. Han Xiao recognized the dynasty's leader at a glance. Her long white hair was tied up, and she had a pair of serious eyes. Her dignified aura made people forget whether she was beautiful or not. Unravel Sin Rebate, the ruler of the Red Empire. That's right, the current dynasty's leader was a woman. The Red Empire prided itself on iron and blood. It respected the strong, regardless of gender. The succession of the dynasty's leaders was based on a nurturing system, and it had nothing to do with blood relations. During the term of the previous leader, the next generation of candidates would be groomed. There was more than one quota for grooming candidates, and they were the absolute elites chosen by the higher-ups and various factions. Bang! The emissary closed the door from outside. "Black Star, I am the Red Empire's ruler, Unravel. Please sit." Unravel stood up and spoke calmly. She walked over and extended her hand. The man behind her followed closely, and his sharp eyes were fixed on Han Xiao. It seemed that no movement could escape his eyes. "Hello." Han Xiao shook hands with her, and they sat opposite each other on the sofa. The man behind Uriel was still standing behind her. "This is Claude, the leader of the Empire's personal guards." Uriel introduced the man behind her. Claude was expressionless as he nodded in greeting. Han Xiao's expression did not change, but his mind was very active. In his previous life, the leaders of the universal civilizations had changed many times during the versions. Uriel had been the Red Empire's ruler during one of the versions. During her term, the achievement that the players were most familiar with was the development of the flickering world, opening up a new star field for the dynasty. The players in his previous life knew very little about this ruler of the dynasty. In her version, the players were mainly active in the flickering world and their own star fields. They did not have much contact with the upper echelons of the universal civilizations. To them, the leader of a universal civilization was just a few lines in the background introduction. And now, Uriel had appeared before him alive. This woman was one of the 3 people with the greatest authority in the universe. She could even be said to be the ruler of the universe. The meaning she represented had completely covered her beauty, ugliness, and gender. Claude behind her was her bodyguard, a veteran beyond grade, a nurture by the dynasty. He was an Esper, and his ability was to control dark energy and dark matter. His nicknames were Dark Emperor, Ruler of Dark Matter, Lightless Light, Celestial Distorter, and so on. This person was one of the 3 strongest beyond grade, as in the dynasty. "First of all, on behalf of the Red Empire, I welcome you to join us." Uriel went straight to the point, staring into Han Xiao's eyes. "It's my honor," Han Xiao said politely. Uriel slowly said, "Regarding the initial exploration of the flickering world, the dynasty needs the strength of you and Heber. According to our cooperation agreement, other than the support of the dynasty's resources, after the mission is completed, you will be given a territory in the flickering world and have the right to develop on your own." Han Xiao nodded. "I understand. You're an ally of the dynasty. As long as you contribute to the dynasty will not be stingy with resources. The more responsibilities you're willing to take on, the more resources the dynasty will give you. Sometimes, the dynasty may issue a call to dispatch beyond grade A combatants, including you, to carry out certain missions. Of course, if you encounter some problems, you can also apply for the support of the dynasty's beyond grade A combatants. Remember, you're the pillar of the dynasty, and the dynasty will also support you." Uriel's tone was serious. Hearing this, Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and was quite satisfied. Duty and power came hand in hand. He had joined the Red Empire and become their supercombatant. At the same time, he also had a strong backing. The many beyond grade A allies were not only the dynasty's resources, but he also had the right to borrow them. As the saying went, a cloud-piercing arrow could summon thousands of troops. As for the evolution cube in your hands, you can rest assured. We welcome you to hand it over, but even if you're unwilling, the dynasty will not snatch it from you. However, I have a request. The dynasty will not object to you using the evolution cube to contact other organizations, but the number of people the dynasty can modify is unlimited. We can send people to the Black Star Corps to be modified at any time. Of course, that's not a problem. Han Xiao nodded. He had limited the number of people the other civilizations could use, but naturally, he would not limit his biggest ally, the Red Empire. Furthermore, the Red Empire had too many people, so they would not make such an excessive request. Even if they had the evolution cube, they would not do so. Since you've come to the dynasty's mother planet, just as well, you can stay here for a few days and modify the troops on our mother planet, Uriel said. As expected, this is one of the important reasons you called me over. Han Xiaoxin was moved. Compared to sending elites to the Shattered Star Ring to be modified, it was obviously more convenient to call him over to the Red Empire. Chapter 792. The two of them talked for a while before Uriel changed the topic and said, "There's one more thing. The dynasty is willing to help the Black Star Corps establish a branch in the central galaxy to facilitate communication. You brought the mobile base here with the same intention, and the dynasty supports it. That's great. Han Shao nodded. I'll get someone to talk to you about the details, Unravel said. If you have any other requests, you can tell me now. Han Shao stroked his chin and said, I hope to obtain the ultimate knowledge of the mechanic class as soon as possible. I wonder if there's any chance. Unravel's expression did not change. The resources of the dynasty are rewarded to the allies who contribute. If you want to obtain them as soon as possible, I suggest you do some things for the dynasty. I'll get someone to sort out the matters that require manpower and inform you. Then, Unravel stood up, stretched out her hand, and gestured for him to leave. Han Shao did not say anything else. He stood up, shook her hand, said goodbye, and left. The emissary had been waiting outside for a long time and let him out of the palace. After Han Shao left, Unravel leaned against the chair and closed her eyes. Claudia, when you meet him later, remember to control the situation. Claudia nodded and left. After boarding the hover vehicle, the pilot turned around and headed in another direction instead of going back the same way they came. Your Excellency Black Star, the national pillars have been waiting for you for a long time. I'll bring you to meet them, the emissary explained. Han Shao did not say anything. He was thinking about the negotiation with Unravel earlier. This meeting was very brief. Unravel was very busy and did not have time to chat. They talked about serious matters and mentioned the cooperation treaty of the Flickering World. After the exploration of the entire star field was completed, he would be the vanguard of the exploration team and would be given an area to develop on his own. It was like a fief approved by the government. He was able to govern this area, and the mining rights and other miscellaneous rights belonged to him. He only needed to pay taxes to the Empire on time. This was an important clause in the cooperation agreement. It was enough to allow the Black Star Corps to reach greater heights, and it was also something that Han Shao cared a lot about. As for the location and size of the fief, it would depend on the results of his development in the star field. The Dynasty Alliance, the Evolution Cube, and the Black Star Corps were his rights and obligations as an ally. If he wanted to obtain an ultimate knowledge, he would have to complete some of the Empire's missions. With Unravel's instructions, he did not need to trigger the missions himself. The Empire's people would sort out the missions and come to him. This was much more convenient. Unravel, the head of the Empire. She doesn't show her emotions. It's not easy to see through her, Han Shao thought to himself. During the conversation earlier, the impression that Unravel had left on him was that she was full of dignity and the aura of a leader. Compared to an individual with flesh and blood, this dynasty head was more like a symbol, making people ignore her gender, beauty, and personality. Han Shao had basically given up on the idea of gaining favorability with her. The head of the Empire represented the Empire. Unravel had most likely cut off her own desires, cutting off her own weaknesses and maintaining her cold rationality. She would never allow herself to lose her composure, making all her personal feelings unable to affect her decisions. For such a person, gaining favorability would cost a lot, and Han Shao did not intend to waste his energy. In comparison, it would be easier to befriend a beyond grade A super. Very soon, the vehicle stopped in front of Villa. This was not a reception area, but a residential area for the internal personnel. Claudia stood in front of the door with an expressionless face. He nodded and said, Black Star, come in with me. Everyone has been waiting for a long time. Han Shao walked out of the vehicle and looked at Claudia with a strange expression. Not long ago, the two of them had met at Unravel's place. He had taken the vehicle, but in order to wait for him in advance, this guy had run over. Although a beyond grade A speed was faster than a land vehicle, Han Shao could not help but find this scene funny. Bang! They pushed the door open and entered. The two of them walked into the house, and 6 beyond grade, as of different appearances, looked over and stared at Han Shao with curiosity. Claudia also found a seat and sat down, leaving Han Shao standing alone. Han Shao glanced around. He was not unfamiliar with these 6 people. They were all famous beyond grade A allies of the Red Empire. There was even a member of the Ancient Ones among them. Han Shao could not help but look at him again. However, among the 3 strongest people in the dynasty, only Claudia was present. The other two were not. The 7 people present had different expressions. Some were eager, some were indifferent, and some were full of interest. These beyond grade, as were from different dynasty factions, so their personal standpoints were actually different. Your black star, the shattered star ring. One of them sized him up. His gaze swept past the evolution cube. There seemed to be a malicious glint in his eyes. Who else do you think I am? Han Xiao raised his brows. He did not hold back. Everyone was a beyond grade A, so he did not plan to keep a low profile here. Only by showing his edge would he be valued. 5 beyond grade as in the shattered star ring. You and Heber have both joined the Red Empire. Which one of you is stronger? Another person asked with interest. If you're so curious, why don't you try it out yourself? Han Xiao shrugged. He did not want to stand and be questioned, so he casually found a seat and sat down. These beyond grade as did not know that although this was the first time they had met, Han Xiao knew their backgrounds and understood the current situation at a glance. Among the 7 of them, Claudi's identity was extraordinary. He appeared cold and calm. He represented the ruler's faction and did not interfere. A beyond grade A who sided with the dynasty's military faction was very interested in him and seemed to have the intention of roping him in. The other 5 more or less had the intention of probing him. Seeing Han Xiao showing off his edge this time, the few of them looked at each other and saw a hint of surprise in each other's eyes. In the past, the newcomers came with the intention of befriending them and thought that everyone would speak politely, while the veterans would make the meeting look like a joint interrogation. They would constantly ask provocative questions to provoke the other party, admiring the attitude of a beyond grade who would hold back his anger and answer all the questions. Most of the people present had gone through this step and left behind a dark history. Therefore, this method became a tradition for them to accept newcomers. If they could not hold it in, they would use their fists to do the talking and decide their future status and speaking rights. They would only give face to those beyond grade as who had been famous for a long time and did not want to provoke them. Black Star, who had just advanced to the beyond grade A realm, was naturally not in this category. However, just as they started, before they could really start the provocation, Black Star retorted. Clearly, this newcomer did not intend to answer according to their wishes. Heber had probably taught him his experience. In their opinion, Han Xiao seemed to have known about their tradition long ago. In the Shattered Star Ring, there was Heber, who had left behind a dark history. Black Star most likely learned about the situation from him and wanted to use this method to prevent them from succeeding. Dream on. Everyone quietly looked at each other and had a plan. He, the guy who spoke first, said calmly, Black Star, you still don't know your position, right? Oh, Your Excellency Star Slasher, what do you mean? Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Furu, beyond grade A pugilist, soldier branch, nicknamed Star Slasher, Star Splitter, and so on. He came from the primeval Star River and now had the dynasty behind him. He developed in the Central Galaxy and operated tens of thousands of galactic pugilist dojos. This is the Central Galaxy, the center of the universe. Do you think it's the Shattered Star Ring with only 5 beyond grade as? How dare you speak to us like this? Boom! Before he finished speaking, Viru suddenly released his aura. The sharp aura split the villa into 2, and the thick aura pressed down on Han Xiao with a cold gaze. As if he was angry, he spoke word by word. A newcomer who just advanced to the beyond grade A realm. What right does he have to be arrogant in front of us? TSK. Claudi was expressionless. He waved his hands and signaled for the patrols to stay away. Viru restrained his energy and did not spread it to other places. He did not stop Viru's actions either. Other than the beyond grade, Ahu leaned toward the young faction. The others pretended to be unfriendly and stared at Han Xiao, pressuring him. Even if Heber had told him the rules in advance, they did not believe that Black Star was not afraid of offending all of them when a bunch of beyond grade A dynasty allies were targeting a newcomer. If Black Star was stubborn to the end, they would not mind teaching him a lesson. As for whether they would offend Black Star, who was not a beyond grade A organization, it did not matter who was fawning over whom. They would see if they would panic if they offended one or more beyond grade As. If they could find out that a beyond grade A was narrow-minded, they would consider their attitude toward each other in the future. The few of them secretly sized up Han Zhao's expression, trying to find a trace of panic or submission on his face. Han Zhao narrowed his eyes and suddenly chuckled. All right, let's make things simpler. We're all beyond grade S. If there's any conflict, let's settle it by fighting. Then, without waiting for the others to react, Han Zhao pointed at Viru and said, How about you have a match with me? Hearing this, the few of them were shocked and interested. This newcomer actually took the initiative to challenge them to establish his dominance? How confident! Did he not know that they were all veterans who had fought for the dynasty for a very long time? They originally wanted to initiate a spar to provoke Black Star, but they did not expect this guy to take the initiative to do so. Okay, Viru's eyes darkened. He had already displayed his strength, but Black Star still wanted to challenge him. Did this not mean that he thought he was a pushover and had a chance of winning? Not only did Black Star want to establish his dominance, but Viru would not allow his position to be challenged either. Han Zhao's face was calm. He had already guessed that only by using his fists would he be able to gain the right to speak in the circle of beyond grade A allies, so he had long been mentally prepared. If he wanted to befriend a beyond grade A, he would first have to display strength that made others take him seriously. Only then would he have the right to communicate with them. This time, Claudia slowly spoke. Fight outside the psionic seal ring. Don't fight near the mother planet. Your Excellency ruler, Black Star, did not have a good time meeting the national pillars. He challenged His Excellency Claudia and decided to spar. Claudia and the other national pillars followed him. Hearing the report from her subordinate through the internal communicator, Urinril's expression did not change. She slowly said, Claudia will be in charge of this. You don't have to worry about it. Yes. Go and inform Black Star's companions. Then, Urinril hung up the communicator and shook her head. She did not like the tradition of beyond grade A allies bullying newcomers, but if it was not necessary, she did not want to force the beyond grade as to do so. However, it was not necessarily a bad thing for the dynasty's allies to have a bad relationship in private. It would not affect their cooperation with the dynasty. What? He's fighting with those allies? After hearing the report from the emissary, the expressions of Hela and the other Black Star guards changed drastically. This time, Aesop could not help but speak up to calm them down. Don't worry. It's just a normal spar between beyond grade As. I've seen it with my own eyes before. Unfortunately, no one listened to him. Let's go take a look. Ims did not say anything and walked out of the door. Chapter 793. Outside the psionic seal ring, Han Zhao and Viru floated in space. A spaceship was watching them from not far away. The spaceship was carrying Claudia and a few other beyond grade as well as Ames, Aesop, and the others. Both sides were watching the battle from the same spaceship. Long time no see, Aesop. That member of the Ancient Ones greeted him with a fake smile. Raven Loudy, you're still alive, Aesop said with annoyance. Ever since you were kicked out of the Ancient Ones, I haven't heard any news about you. So, you went to the most remote shattered star ring. Why? Can't you make it in the other star fields? Raven Loudy said with a teasing tone. You've lived for too long, and you're starting to forget things. How come I remember that I was the one who voluntarily left the Ancient Ones? Aesop glanced at him coldly. Among the Ancient Ones, Aesop's relationship with this person was only SOSO. When Aesop left the Ancient Ones, other than not wanting to use this name to hinder his own death, it was also partly because he didn't have a good relationship with the Ancient Ones. As a powerful prophet, he didn't like to use his ability for irrelevant people, and after rejecting too many times, it became a source of conflict. Ames did not know anyone and stood by the side to watch the battle. She was clearly separated from Claudia and the others. This was a chance to observe Black Star's strength. Other than Claudia, who was not interested, everyone else focused and waited for the two of them to fight. Everyone knew Viru's strength. His combat strength had been tested countless times, and there was no doubt about it. Therefore, the only question was how passive Black Star would be. It was said that Black Star had the nickname of Indestructible Body, and the toughness of his body seemed to be on par with the tyrant. There was no telling if he would be able to block Veru's blade. Han Shao activated his mechanical suit. The helmet covered his face, so no one could see his expression. He then opened his arms, and the secondary dimension gate opened. The Black Mech Legion swarmed out and filled the battlefield instantly. There are a lot of them, but they're all just small fries in front of me. Veru snorted coldly in his mind. His muscles suddenly expanded, and the indigo-blue flames burned on the surface of his body. He made a grasping gesture with his right hand, and the raging flames condensed in his palm. They continued to elongate and turned into a blue energy blade that was hundreds of meters long. It seemed to have condensed into a solid form. The pugilist class also had different branches according to the martial arts school they specialized in. The combat weapon branch, as the name suggested, specialized in using weapons in battle. This was different from a mechanical pugilist branch. Mechanical pugilists completely relied on weapons in battle, using mechanical force to increase the power of their mechanical weapons. On the other hand, pugilists only relied on weapons to better unleash their martial arts, and the lethality of their attacks still came from their own pugilist flames. Veru's chest puffed up, and flames poured into his blade. He slashed out multiple blue blades of light, which extended continuously and left a blank space in the Mech Legion's formation. The mechanical soldier that was struck first shattered, and the power of the light blade continued to weaken. Although the mechanical soldiers at the back were heavily injured, they were only sent flying. Han Shao activated many of his buffs and controlled the Mech Legion to surround and attack. Veru was surrounded by the black mass of mechanical soldiers. His blade danced like a ball of blue light, and the light blades continuously broke through the formation of the mechanical soldiers, causing huge damage. It was as if an energy tornado had appeared in the universe. This guy's lethality is indeed high. Probably even Heber is not as good as him. The battle information kept appearing, and Han Shao was shocked. Compared to Heber's fists that were as heavy as mountains, Veru's combat style focused on speed and sharpness. His AoE damage was not bad, and his single target damage was even more terrifying. Just now, a defensive giant soldier that was hundreds of meters tall had its shield fully activated, but it was still cut in half by Veru's casual attack, without any delay. However, Han Shao did not choose this opponent casually. Veru's attack power was high, but there was one area where he could not compare to Heber, and that was his tankiness was far inferior to Heber's. Although this guy was a pugilist and had a bunch of damage reduction talents, he lacked a core tankiness ability. He did not have true damage immunity. Veru had a talent that reduced 50% of true damage, which was much weaker than true damage immunity. Even with only half of true damage remaining, it was still much higher than normal damage. The styles of these two were the tanker and the attacker respectively. The former was like a sticky candy that could only rub against each other with their bodies, while the latter happened to be an existence that Han Shao countered indirectly. Light blades shot out everywhere, and the dense formation suffered quite a bit of damage. The Mech Legion responded by spreading out and attacking with long-range attacks. Psionic cannons were fired one after another, and Veru's blade danced into a ball of light. He used some kind of pugilist technique to turn the blade of light around him into a special shield, blocking most of the psionic cannons. Exploding balls of light appeared and disappeared as the blade of light danced. However, there were too many Mech Legion, and under such dense attacks, Veru's defense could not avoid some gaps. The psionic cannons that luckily passed through the shield of blade of light hit his body, and his protective aura fluctuated nonstop. Feeling the cells in his body being destroyed, Veru's expression changed. So powerful. A prolonged battle is not suitable for me. I need to attack his main body. With that thought, Veru's aura shook violently, and the shield of blade of light around him spread out, turning into a shockwave that blew away the mechanical soldiers around him. Then, he held his blade in a reverse grip and turned into a blue phantom charging toward Han Shao. leaving behind countless afterimages. He charged to the front of the mechanical army and stabbed forward. All the afterimages seemed to have merged into this attack. Star/style, pugilist technique, blade shadow, torrent. Thousands of glowing blades exploded at the same time and spread out in all directions. Like a dam bursting, it instantly destroyed the front of the mechanical army in one direction, penetrating through many layers of defense. Broken mechanical parts scattered all over the sky. Seeing this, Han Shao clenched his fist, and blue-gold mechanical force shot out from the void dimension. Like a lightning net, it grabbed all the parts and connected them together. Waste modification, advanced machinery construction. The broken parts were formed into mechanical soldiers. However, in this short instant, Viru's figure disappeared. As if he had teleported, he passed through the encirclement and appeared in front of Han Shao. The blade of pugilist flames in his hand shrunk from a few hundred meters to a normal size, and he slashed down with even more power. This is not my first time fighting a mechanic. Viru was expressionless. It was not a secret that mechanics had the ability to use waste modification. He was very experienced and knew that a mechanic would definitely use this move. Taking advantage of this moment, he used his special movement skill to get close to Han Shao. He was a pugilist who specialized in speed, so he had more ways to get close to Han Shao than Heber. Swoosh! The blade slashed through Han Zhao's body without any hindrance, as if cutting him in half. However, Viru did not feel like he had slashed anything, and his expression changed drastically. The Han Shao that had been split in half suddenly disappeared. His real body was a dozen meters away, and his position had shifted. Earlier, Han Shao had used some kind of illusion to mislead the senses of the pugilist. It was very difficult to fool a beyond grade A pugilist who could lock onto his target with his aura. This special illusion was one of the advanced machines that Han Shao had built. It could be used in a battle between beyond grade as to create an illusion that could perfectly simulate one's own energy wave. It had a long cooldown. After missing a slash, Viru did not stop. He quickly changed his hand and slashed again. The blade extended and slashed toward Han Zhao's chest like a long whip. Star/style whip slash. Originally, this slash was aimed at Han Zhao's chest, but Viru changed the direction and slashed toward Han Zhao's head. However, Han Zhao's reaction stunned him. He did not dodge, but faced the attack head-on. The blade slashed through Han Zhao's armor and slashed through his forehead. Blood spurted out. Viru was shocked. Before he could retract his blade, Han Shao grabbed his arm and punched him in the chest at close range, unleashing the tiger roar of the Battle Tiger mechanical suit. Boom! The power of vibration reverberated in Viru's body. A large number of his cells were destroyed, but they were quickly regenerated under the nourishment of Viru's energy. The cycle repeated, causing him intense pain in his body. The attribute bonuses from machinery apostolization and mechanical force, King's authority, greatly increased Han Zhao's individual strength, so the power of this attack was also increased. Immediately afterward, Han Zhao's bloody wounds healed right before Viru's eyes. The nanoparticles of the mechanical suit also repaired the hole in the armor. This recovery speed, Viru's pupils constricted. At this time, the mech legion behind Viru turned around and fired at the two of them. Viru's expression froze. Just as he was about to retreat, two enhanced Oathkeepers appeared beside Han Shao and charged forward. The blade slashed through the Oathkeeper's body, but it met with great resistance and was unable to cut it in half. Blue and gold mechanical force flickered in the wounds of the two Oathkeepers. These two Oathkeepers were super elite soldiers enhanced by Emperor's Gift. Even a beyond grade, it would not be able to deal with them in one hit. Unable to destroy the two Oathkeepers with one slash, Viru reacted quickly and hurriedly sent the two mechanical soldiers flying. However, he also suffered the counterattack of the Oathkeepers. He was hit in the chest by a series of psionic energy cannons, and his movements paused for a moment. The psionic energy cannons behind him also fired, and Viru was not willing to give up the opportunity to get close to Han Shao. He turned his blade around and created a defensive light shield, which barely blocked the psionic energy cannons for a moment. He then continued to attack Han Xiao. The blade wrapped around the two of them and left their original positions, turning into a meteor and disappearing into the distance. The two of them fought in close combat, and the blade slashed through Han Xiao's body time and time again, cutting off pieces of the mechanical suit and flesh. However, his recovery speed was visible to the naked eye, and his wounds healed completely within seconds. The more Viru fought, the more shocked he became. He had heard of Han Xiao's indestructible body nickname before, but he did not expect it to be so terrifying after seeing it with his own eyes. Claudia, who was watching the battle from afar, stopped being nonchalant at some point, and his expression became serious as he focused on the battle between the two of them. Han Zhao's recovery speed also made him surprised and doubtful. In his impression, there had never been a mechanic who had such a strong physique that was not weaker than a pugilist's. This level of combat power isn't something a newbie should have, someone said in shock, voicing the thoughts in everyone's mind. Recoil, thorns, and void dimension jump were used one after another to nullify the opponent's attacks. The two of them chased after each other, and after a short battle, the layers of Mech Legion finally stopped Viru, allowing Han Xiao to escape from the melee battle. After enduring Viru's series of fierce attacks, Han Xiao was almost unharmed. At least, no one could tell from his appearance that he had suffered any damage. Han Xiao patted his chest and opened his arms to Viru. Before Viru could react, the Mech Legion's attacks instantly increased, and with the help of all kinds of traps, Viru was forced into a temporary passive state. At this time, a few large heavy mechanical cannons appeared behind Han Xiao, and psionic energy started to gather, emitting powerful energy waves. Star Destroyer Cannon. Viru's expression changed. To think that Han Xiao would bring out such a strategic weapon. This was way beyond the scope of a spar. Suddenly, hundreds of electromagnetic chains shot out from the Mech Legion's formation and wrapped around Viru's limbs, binding him tightly. Viru tried to break free, but was shocked to find that he was unable to do so. It was as if these chains were elastic tentacles that knew how to deflect force. This was a mechanical device that Han Xiao had modified using his cutting-edge knowledge, activation theory. It could even temporarily control a beyond grade A, and it was classified as a high-level mechanical device. It was hidden within the Mech Legion and caught Viru by surprise. The next moment, teams of mechanical soldiers focused their fire on Viru, and psionic cannons rained down like a storm. The light shone on Viru's face, which had changed drastically. He suddenly unleashed all of his energy flames, which turned into many energy blades and spun around his body, forming layers upon layers of defensive mechanisms. Blade control, air barrier. The explosion far away expanded, and Han Xiao controlled the secondary space-based Star Destroyer cannon to fire. A few thick dark blue light pillars shot out, heading straight for Viru. Halfway through the Star Destroyer cannon, dark energy light pillars suddenly appeared in front of it, blocking the path of the cannon. They collided with the psionic energy light pillars and exploded into a chain reaction, expanding in the universe. On the other side, dark energy barriers blocked the concentrated fire of the army, giving Viru a chance to catch his breath. He hurriedly broke free from the trap, activated some kind of movement skill, turned into a blue light, and left the battlefield. He hovered by the side, looking rather haggard. His face was pale, and he seemed to have suffered some serious injuries. If it were Heber, this attack would have been nothing more than a scratch. However, Viru was not Heber, and his health had been reduced significantly by true damage. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes, told the Mech Legion to stop, and turned to look at the spaceship. Claudia was standing behind the porthole, and he had raised a hand. The dark energy earlier was controlled by him, and it had interfered in the battle between the two of them. "The spar is over," Claudia said slowly in the communication channel. "This battle will be considered a draw." A draw? Everyone had different expressions. They were all smart people, and they knew that this was just to save Viru's face. Just from a situation earlier, Han Xiao had undoubtedly won, and he had even displayed his combat style. Strong recovery ability, a huge mech legion, and strange attack power. This type of mechanic had almost no shortcomings. Everyone could not help but be shocked, and they all stopped underestimating Han Xiao because he was a newbie and came from the Shattered Star Ring. Han Xiao's strength had already earned their respect. Vera's expression was not good. As the one who had been challenged, he had been full of confidence, but now he had been defeated by a newbie. He felt very embarrassed and unhappy. However, his opponent had gained the upper hand fair and square, so there was nothing he could say. Hearing Claudi's words, Han Xiao did not comment and put away the mech legion. The result did not matter. As long as he achieved his goal of displaying his strength, it was enough for him. Furthermore, if Viru did not care about his injuries and unleashed his full strength, his explosive power would only be higher than Heber's. Even with his strong recovery ability, he would not have been able to handle it. He had gained the upper hand in the spar partly because he countered Viru's ability, and partly because of the nature of the battle. It looked like he had completely suppressed Viru, but if they had really fought, Viru might not have made the same mistake, so his chances of winning were not very high. I still have to increase my strength, Han Xiao thought. Among the beyond grade, as he was very strong in a battle of attrition, but he could not suppress them with pure strength. He had accumulated a large amount of experience, and when the experience penalty was over, he would welcome a new round of leveling up. At that time, he would probably be able to rise a level among the beyond grade as. After returning to the spaceship, he walked into the cabin and was welcomed by everyone. Han Xiao noticed that their eyes were no longer filled with judgment, but a certain amount of respect, so he nodded. After this spar, his strength was recognized by everyone, and he was officially accepted into this circle. Vera walked in behind Han Xiao with a sullen face. He turned around and said with a deep voice, "If there's a chance in the future, let's spar again. Then I probably won't have a chance." Han Xiao raised his brows. "What a joke. Why would I fight with you without any benefits? I'm not a battle maniac." However, speaking of which, it seemed like most pugilists were battle maniacs. Han Xiao could not help but think of Heber's brother domain. Remember the mobile version of the website, M801 Spar, page 1/1, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 794. The spaceship returned to the mother planet. On the spaceship, the few beyond grade A allies no longer put on airs and formally introduced themselves to Han Xiao. Han Xiao had long known their names, but he was just going through the motions. Some of them were directly related to the dynasty. Some were people who had developed their forces in the central galaxy, and only two were big shots from other star fields. One was from the Sea of Star Spirits, and the other was from the primeval Star River. The latter was the beyond grade A who leaned toward the military. Among this group of people, his attitude was the most friendly. This person was not too old. His name was Baoni, and his nickname was Incinerate or Origin Flame. His Esper ability was not to play with fire, but to ignite all kinds of things on a microscopic level, even things that were not flammable. Furthermore, it was not only limited to matter, but also energy. One of his more famous deeds was igniting an asteroid. Be it the trees, soil, or metal, everything was burned up, turning it into a charred planet. Han Zhao's interactions with the dynasty's elites had naturally been reported back to the dynasty. His care for Tenny was seen as a sign of friendship by the dynasty's young faction. Although Tenny had not reached the true upper echelons yet, within the young faction, he had already shown his abilities and was being groomed as a core member in the future. Otherwise, he would not have been included in the first batch of the modification team. Therefore, due to the faction, Han Xiao did not reject Baoni's intentions of befriending him. The two of them were quite agreeable. Apart from this person, another ally that Han Xiao was quite fond of was Raven Loudy from the Ancient Ones. He was neither cold nor warm to him, so Han Xiao did not intentionally befriend him. The Ancient Ones was a loose alliance. The members were all extraordinary people. Some were beyond grade as, and some were espers. What they had in common was that they had lived for a very long time. In the galaxy, the Ancient Ones was one of the most famous civilian super-organizations. They had members that joined the three universal civilizations. For example, the Red Empire had two Ancient Ones allies. One was Raven Loudy, and the other was one of the three strongest national pillars. The Radiant Federation and the Arcane Church also had different Ancient Ones allies. Manison from the Mecha Empire was a high-level ally in the Radiant Federation, but he was very independent. After all, he was the leader of the mechanical race, and he had a huge force under him, forming a faction of his own. The Ancient Ones represented a huge resource network. It was a pity that he had not lived in seclusion for so many years and did not meet the requirements to join. Otherwise, Han Shao would have given it a try. Because of the sparring just now, he had won a certain status. Everyone returned to the mother planet and communicated on the ship. Only then did Han Shao officially become acquainted with everyone and become familiar with their faces. Someone wanted to borrow the evolution cube, but Han Shao did not agree immediately. To a beyond grade, this was like adding wings to a tiger. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. As a direct member of the dynasty, Claudia could enjoy unlimited slots in the dynasty, but the other side allies did not have such treatment. If he did not give them some benefits, Han Shao did not want to help them increase their strength for free. After all, he could not guarantee what kind of relationship they would have in the future. Hearing that Han Shao wanted benefits, everyone had different thoughts and did not immediately express their opinions. Originally, they had planned to make Black Star give in during their first meeting and take out the evolution cube to please them. However, they did not expect Black Star to be so tough and not easy to deal with. This plan naturally fell through, and they could only find a way to borrow in the future. As big shots, they were not impatient. After saying goodbye to the group, Han Shao and Ames returned to their residence. Hela and the others were relieved to see him return. This can be considered my official debut in the circle of high-level combatants of the three universal civilizations, stepping onto the stage of the central galaxy. Han Shao thought. This was within his expectations. Having more friends made things easier. By making friends with this group of people, he could indirectly use a portion of their resources. Of course, this was also his position in the eyes of others. They were each other's connections, exchanging resources. However, there were also disadvantages. He would be treated as a bargaining chip by the other organizations, attracting the attention of more large organizations. The hostility and opponents he would face in the future would be even stronger. There was no other way. After receiving so many resources from the dynasty, it would be wishful thinking if he was not willing to take any risks. The central galaxy is highly controlled by the three universal civilizations, and the development of my organization is not free. It's not suitable for me to focus on it. I still have to develop my foundation in the Shattered Star Ring and the Flickering World. Over here, I'll just leave a contact point. After I'm done with this, it's better to stay away from this troublesome place for the time being, Han Shao thought. If he wanted to increase his influence in the central galaxy, he did not have to establish a foothold here. Running his headquarters was the way to go. Only when his value was high would it be easier to increase his status. That night, Claudia told Unravel about the battle between Han Shao and Viru, as well as his opinion of Han Shao. What do you think is the possibility of Black Star reaching a higher level in the future? It was already late at night, but Unravel's office was still brightly lit. She stared at Claudia in front of her and asked with a deep voice. It's not impossible, Claudia replied. The primordial ones had existed for thousands of years, and after researching for so long, the classification of beyond grade A and above had become clearer. There were also strong and weak ones. Black Star was so young, and his combat style had almost no shortcomings. There was still room for growth in the future, and it was not impossible for him to be on par with him. Claudia's evaluation of Han Shao was not low. In his long life, he had seen many beyond grade as. Some of them had already exhausted their potential to reach beyond grade A from the calamity grade, and their progress was limited. However, some of them could still continue to grow, and they were geniuses among geniuses. In his eyes, Black Star belonged to the latter. However, after seeing so many of them, he no longer liked to socialize and was too lazy to get to know new people. Furthermore, Claude was a direct descendant of the dynasty, so with his extraordinary status and strength, there was no need for him to deliberately befriend anyone. Thus, he had been ignoring Han Xiao along the way. It was not that he looked down on him. After all, not every beyond grade liked to socialize like Han Technician. Urinril leaned back in her chair and pondered. If that's the case, it's more useful to have him stay at the edge of the star field. His current focus is on the flickering world, but after that, he'll most likely come to the central galaxy to develop. We have enough manpower here, so there's no need for him. The three universal civilizations in the central galaxy occasionally had conflicts, but because it was their headquarters, there would not be too big of a conflict. Thus, the dynasty actually did not need so many beyond grade as to come to the central galaxy to develop. It was fine as long as they had enough manpower. Too many would instead be a waste of resources. Throwing these beyond grade as to the other star fields to strengthen the dynasty's control over those star fields was the true meaning of the title National Pillar. However, the central galaxy was the center of the universe after all. Countless people racked their brains to have the right to speak there. To Urinril, the number of allies there was too saturated. She did not like so many people using the dynasty's name to develop their forces there. Black Star had brought the mobile base over, so it was clear that he wanted to build a branch there. Seeing that they were allies, Urinril was willing to provide some help, but she was prepared to secretly limit the speed of expansion of the Black Star core in the central galaxy. In short, she wanted to reduce the chances of Black Star coming to the central galaxy so that he could stay in Shattered Star Ring or the Flickering World. Urinril believed in Claude's judgment. He said that Black Star had a chance to touch a higher level, so he definitely would not be wrong. Thus, Black Star could be an important chess piece. Since he was an important chess piece, it naturally had to be placed in a suitable place to be effective. The news of Black Star being officially received by the dynasty's ruler was spread out through the dynasty's channels. Just as Han Xiao expected, the dynasty would not hide this, but use some method to announce that they had a new bargaining chip. His name had officially entered the sights of the various large organizations in the central galaxy. Han Xiao did not have any foundation in the central galaxy, so he did not know the reactions of these large organizations. In the following days, the dynasty arranged for the troops stationed on the mother planet to be modified by the evolution cube. Han Xiao focused on cooperating with the other party. After a few days, the evolution of the dynasty's troops on the mother planet was finally completed. During this period of time, the Black Star Corps did not just wait. With the help of the dynasty, the Black Star Corps used a small piece of land on the dynasty's mother planet to build a simple office. They left a group of people there for a long period of time to facilitate communication. Before leaving, they had already given this group of people a heads up and chose those who were willing to stay in the central galaxy. As for the mobile satellite base of the Black Star Corps, the dynasty naturally would not allow them to set up next to the mother planet. Therefore, they gave Han Xiao a star map and asked him to choose a location in the dynasty's territory to set up a branch base of the Black Star Corps. There was no need to hesitate about choosing a location. Han Xiao already had a draft in mind. Since this trip was to dig up leaks, the location of the branch base was naturally the main area of activity for the players. Han Xiao had matters to attend to, so he did not leave the mother planet for the time being. He ordered the troops to set off first. The security in the dynasty was very good, so there was no need for him to accompany the army to set up a branch base. The reason he stayed on the mother planet, other than bringing Ames and the others to tour, was to obtain the ultimate knowledge. The mission list that Urinril had her subordinates organize had already been sent to Han Xiao's communicator. He picked and chose before finally deciding on a mission. Ordinary miscellaneous missions were not important enough. Only missions that were difficult enough were qualified to exchange for ultimate knowledge. The mission that Han Xiao chose was a mission that required beyond grade as to participate in a routine cleanup of the Fallen Ark organization. In other words, fighting ES God. The three-star areas of the central galaxy were separated by a desolate universe belt, which was a sensitive area and not easy to manage. As a result, the thugs who didn't dare to linger in the three-star areas swarmed into the border gap, creating a place where they could hide their filth. The area of the border crack was very large. During the Exploration Era War, the three universal civilizations fought fiercely in front of their homes as if they would not stop until one of them was dead. This large area was the ancient battlefield back then, and countless planets were abandoned because of it, turning into a desolate universe belt. Now, a large number of brutes were hiding there, and it was not easy to find them. Furthermore, the border crack was not a dead land and was connected to the desolate universe belt outside the central galaxy. Once there was communication with the outside world, it would be even more impossible to eradicate it. The sensitive area was not suitable for major management. Anyway, the three universal civilizations were connected by stargates, and normal tourists would not take the desolate universe belt, so it did not affect the security of the central galaxy much. ES God's team usually hid in the desolate universe belt in the border crack and had always been very secretive. Recently, they seemed to have been exposed and were discovered by the Red Empire's observation devices. ES God was notorious, and to the three universal civilizations, eating, sleeping, and fighting ES God had become a daily operation. They called it a routine cleanup. Han Shao still had a grudge with ES God. Although ES God wanted to make a deal with him, Han Shao would not feel that ES God was a friend just because of that. Since he was now living in the lawful faction, it was best to draw a clear line between him and such notorious brutes on the surface. Speaking of which, it was ES God who found trouble with him in the past. This was the first time he was going to ES God's headquarters to find trouble. If not for the dynasty's cleanup operation, he would not have had this opportunity. Having a strong backer was indeed different. He was a little afraid of ES God's ability and did not plan to go alone. Thus, he sent out an invitation to the group of beyond grade A allies he had recently made. Claudia had a job, so he rejected without any suspense. The others also declined, saying that they did not want to provoke ES God. Only one person accepted his invitation. When do we set off? In the communicator, Bayoni shook the horns on his head. His fiery red skin had the texture of volcanic rock, flowing with agile fire snakes. His eyes were blazing red balls of fire that burned endlessly. He was not a human, but an Esper from the Pyre demon race. Tomorrow, I've already informed the dynasty. They'll send someone to send us over. Han Shao scratched his chin. He had already settled his matters on the dynasty's mother planet, and there was nothing else for him to do here. Next, it was time to complete the two plans he had for coming to the central galaxy. The first was to obtain ultimate knowledge, and the second was to expand his leak farm. The latter only required the signboard of the Black Star Corps and did not require him to show himself. It was a good opportunity to split up and carry out the plan at the same time. With just the two of us, I'm afraid it'll be too risky. ES God's fleet is too large, and he himself is extremely dangerous. Bayoni shook his head. We have more than 2 beyond grade A combatants on our side. Han Shao glanced at Ames beside him. When Ames found out about this, she seemed to be unwilling to be left out and took the initiative to follow them. He did not reject her. It was always good to have more helpers. Seeing him look over, Ames smiled lightly with a hint of eagerness. Chapter 795. A dynasty spaceship slowly left the Crimson Ring star cluster. In the cabin, Han Shao stood in front of the porthole, looking at the shrinking silhouette of the dynasty's mother planet with an expressionless face. He had accepted the mission and notified the dynasty, who had arranged a spaceship to send him off. The operation had been finalized the day before, so he did not waste any time today. He, Bayoni, Ames, and Hela boarded the dynasty's spaceship and headed to the garrison base at the border to participate in the routine cleanup of the fallen Arkansas this time. I really came and left in a hurry. Han Zhao's eyes reflected the dynasty's mother planet that was getting further and further away. He had only stayed on a mother planet for a few days, and it was not even comparable to the time spent on the road. He did not stay for long and left decisively after completing the mission on the mother planet. During this trip, he had met the dynasty ruler and got to know a bunch of national pillars, deepening his relationship with the dynasty, expanding his network, and making the mark of the dynasty even clearer on him. He had fulfilled the wishes of the Red Empire, and in the future, he could be considered one of the backbone of the dynasty. The dynasty's army has finished gathering and is waiting for the Beyond Grade as to go over. Through the Stargate, we should be able to meet up with the main force in 4 to 5 days. From the side, Bayoni walked over and opened his mouth to speak, spitting out sparks. The Crimson Ring star system was the central area of the dynasty, and they were going to the edge of the star field. However, it would only take 4 to 5 days. It was not because the distance was short, but because the transportation in the central galaxy was far more advanced than in the Shattered Star Ring. The universal civilizations had many stargates in their headquarters, forming a fast transportation channel. If it were the sparse stargates in the Shattered Star Ring, this journey would take more than half a month. Han Xiao turned around, thought for a while, and suddenly asked, "Have you participated in similar operations before?" I've participated in the encirclement of the Fallen Ark twice. This is the 3rd time. Most of the Beyond Grade, as in the Central Galaxy, have participated in such operations. Bayoni nodded. It's really eating, sleeping, and fighting ES God. Those allies all said that they did not want to provoke ES God because they did not want to come with me. Han Zhao's mouth twitched. Then ES God has basically fought with all the Beyond Grade as of the 3 universal civilizations? You can say that, but most of the time, we'll only encounter ES God's doppelgangers. Only during large-scale operations against the main Fallen Ark team will we encounter ES God's main body. Those are usually Beyond Grade, as at Claudi's level. ES God's main body is too strong. Just based on what I know, more than 2 Beyond Grade as have died in his hands. There are only so many Beyond Grade as in the entire universe. Bayoni shook his head, because he had deliberately befriended him. Han Zhao's relationship with him was closer than the other Beyond Grade A allies. Hearing this, Han Xiao nodded to show that he understood, his eyes flashing. ES God did have the strength, but to the 3 universal civilizations, they should be able to get rid of him if they gritted their teeth. Yet, they had tolerated him for so long. This time, we have 3 Beyond Grade as. Even if we're unlucky and encounter ES God's main body, we can still escape unscathed, Bayoni said. Bad luck? There's an 80% chance we'll encounter ES God's main body this time. Han Xiao secretly curled his lips. When he arrived at the dynasty's mother planet, ES God's location was coincidentally exposed. He did not feel that this was a coincidence. Thinking of what ES God said when he contacted him, this was most likely the reason. However, he still chose to participate in this operation. Putting away his thoughts, Han Xiao opened the interface to take a look. The routine cleanup mission was placed in the list, and the reward was quite generous. Empire Campaign, Fallen Ark, Repeatable, Mission Introduction. The Fallen Ark is the lost paradise of the thugs of the entire universe. It is notorious for committing all manner of evil and is constantly surrounded by the 3 universal civilizations. Now, the Red Empire has discovered the whereabouts of a Fallen Ark fleet. You have decided to participate in this battle and contribute your strength. Tip: this mission is a faction series mission. You can complete the following requirements in this mission. Elite Soldier. Accumulated 2,000 enemies killed. Reward: 380 EXP, plus 20 Red Empire contribution points. Fierce General. Killed more than 200 Grade C supers. Reward: 810 EXP, plus 30 Red Empire contribution points. Scavenger. Accumulated 10,000 enemies killed. Reward: 1,335 EXP, plus 50 Red Empire contribution points. Decapitator. Killed the fleet commander. Reward: 12,000 EXP, plus 220 Red Empire contribution points directly facing ES God I. Dealt 0. 5% of ES God's HP. Both main body and doppelganger can be used. Reward: 20,000 EXP, plus 350 Red Empire contribution points directly facing ES God 2. Dealt 5% of ES God's HP. Reward: 150,000 EXP, plus 550 Red Empire contribution points directly facing ES God 3. Dealt 15% of ES God's HP. Reward: 650,000 EXP, plus 900 Red Empire contribution points directly facing ES God 4. Successfully cooperate with the Red Empire to eliminate an ES God doppelganger. Reward: 25,000 EXP, 80 Red Empire contribution points, and character summon card, ES God. This was not a one-time mission. As long as there was a chance for a routine cleanup, this mission would appear. The Red Empire was one of the top organizations in Galaxy, and the mission rewards they gave were basically the standard for the later versions. If it involved a Beyond Grade A, the highest reward would be in the tens of billions of EXP. This time, the Fallen Art team was discovered near the border of the Dynasty, so the Dynasty was the one who took the initiative to send troops. Han Shao accepted this mission because of the generous rewards. The directly facing ES God series of rewards took up more than 90% of this repeatable mission, and it was quite challenging. Ordinary players would only be able to kill the enemy's troops at most and would not be able to deal much damage to ES God. Even if they accumulated damage, it would still be very difficult. However, he was different. When he was at the Calamity grade, ES God's doppelganger had beaten him up quite badly. Now that ES God's main body had descended, he might not be able to defeat it, but ES God's doppelganger, which had limited energy, would not be able to give him much pressure. The players needed 12,000 contribution points to exchange for an ultimate knowledge from a universal civilization, and his current identity was completely different. With a discount of half, he could exchange for an ultimate knowledge with 6,000 contribution points. The stronger the faction, the harder it would be to gain favorability. In his previous life, the players had worked so hard for ultimate knowledge that they almost exploded. Because of that, businesses like his were extremely popular. At this time, Han Shao did not want to stay in the Central Galaxy for too long to gain favorability. Thus, he was prepared to use his strength advantage to complete the extremely difficult mission that was almost impossible for the players and earn a large sum of contribution points in one go. In the mission list given by the Dynasty, this was the only mission that could satisfy his requirements and was the most convenient. This was a good opportunity for him to draw a line between him and ES God and send a signal. Not wanting to continue talking about this topic, Han Shao suddenly changed the topic and asked, "By the way, how is your relationship with the Mecha Empire in the primeval Star River?" Bayoni was a member of the Flame Demon race before he became a Beyond Grade A Super, and he still maintained a similar appearance. He still regarded himself as a member of the Flame Demon race, leading a branch of his race in the primeval Star River and expanding his harem. He was living a good life and was one of the big shots in the primeval Star River. The Mecha Empire's Manison was also in the primeval Star River, so Bayoni definitely knew him. Manison? Why are you asking about this? Bayoni was confused. He's a top Beyond Grade A mechanic, after all. I've heard a lot about him, Han Shao casually said. Bayoni did not doubt him. I rarely interact with him. His organization is deeply rooted in the primeval Star River and far surpasses mine. If you want to visit him, I can introduce you. However, he's a member of the Radiant Federation, so it's not good to meet him in private. You're thinking too much. The universal civilizations won't restrict our private interactions. In any case, I don't like meeting people from other organizations. Bayoni shook his head. Han Shao smiled. Although he did not plan to provoke the Mecha Empire, because of Erosia, he still had to be careful. As for the visit, it was not a lie. He was indeed interested in Manison's indestructible Mecha Empire technology. However, he would not visit him now. The development of the flickering world was imminent, and he did not have the time to visit the primeval Star River. However, when the Mecha Empire was mentioned, Han Shao could not help but think of an old enemy, Thousand Shadows. This guy had not taken action for many years, and Han Shao guessed that he might have given up. However, the prey mission was still hanging on his interface. I'll meet him in the abyss of stars in the future, Han Xiao thought. He did not forget the trouble this guy had caused him. Now that his wings were fully grown, he would find a time to settle the score. In the gap between the borders of the central galaxy, a huge fleet was slowly moving. This was a branch fleet of the fallen Arkansas. There was a palace inside the main ship, and the ground was filled with energy transmission circuits that connected to the throne in the middle. An ES-God doppelganger sat on the throne, and the energy core of the spaceship continuously transmitted energy to the ES-God doppelganger through the throne. At this moment, ES-God's main consciousness had descended onto this doppelganger. I wonder who the beyond grade A that the Red Empire sent this time will be, ES-God said with a sigh. According to the intelligence, Black Star has been a guest on the mother planet of the Red Empire. He has the evolution cube with him. Will he come and find me? His spies in the Shattered Star Ring had received news that Black Star was heading to the central galaxy more than half a month ago. If Black Star wanted to make a deal with him, he would need an opportunity to come into contact with him. Thus, ES-God had purposely let a team be discovered by the dynasty to create an opportunity. This was not a coincidence. He could not leave the central galaxy easily, so if he wanted to use the evolution cube with his main body, he could only get Black Star to find him. In order to avoid being caught in a crossfire, it was unlikely that Black Star would come looking for him secretly. Thus, he had to create a situation where he would not be easily suspected. He should understand what I mean. After thinking for a while, ES-God shook his head. He did not doubt Black Star's acuity, but Black Star had not contacted him. He probably had not decided whether to make a deal with him. Under such circumstances, ES-God felt that Han Xiao might not dare to come and contact him. Black Star has already set off. Bayoni will keep an eye on him. In the ruler's office in Trinomir Palace, Claudia reported the situation to Urinril with an expressionless face. Urinril put down the documents in her hands, rubbed the corners of her eyes, and slowly said, "Him choosing to fight ES-God is out of my expectations. The timing is a little too coincidental. He has the evolution cube, and ES-God has also shown interest in this item. We have to be on guard." Originally, the mission Han Xiao chose was not something that she, as the ruler of the dynasty, should care about. However, she noticed something suspicious and had to pay attention to it. To the dynasty, ES-God stealing the evolution cube was not a secret. Han Xiao bringing the evolution cube to fight ES-God might be because he knew about ES-God's greed and wanted to show off his sovereignty. However, it could also be because he had other ulterior motives. After all, Black Star was a new ally. Although it seemed like the dynasty was taking care of him, in reality, ever since he set off for the Central Galaxy, he had been closely watched by the dynasty. Bayoni had agreed to Han Zhao's invitation partly because they were both part of the young faction and partly because Claudia had requested him to protect him. Apart from that, he also wanted to keep an eye on Black Star for Urinril. The dynasty was not willing to see any of their allies being involved with ES-God. According to Black Star's information, he's good at cooperating with various parties in the Shattered Star Ring. To be able to build what he has today, he's clearly not someone who knows his place. Urinrel opened her eyes. Her gaze was calm as she slowly said, "I hope he won't be too arrogant and think that he can fool the dynasty." Recommended 2 books, Don't Ascend, author, Warm Words to Wine, and Penahedron, author, You Shouldn't Ask for Leave During the New Year smiley face, _3, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.